After his sudden death, the man confronted a suited figure claiming to be God. Though aware of how unfair it was, the man calmly accepted his fate. In response, God granted him 3 special powers to use freely in the next world. Awakening in a new land, the man embraced his new life with a smile and simple tools. He was welcomed by a cheerful girl named Chapeli. Life in the village began quietly but warmly. Reincarnation became a reality after dying in his 40s as a plain and forgettable man. Now reborn as a young villager named Vibalfasani, nicknamed Bay, he lives with his little sister, Chapel. Though rural life lacks conveniences like gas and water, Bay quickly adapts to the rustic routine. The sky clears, and with a smile, Bay embraces the peaceful rhythm of his new world. Before breakfast, he sets out for morning chores, eager to contribute to village life once again. Bay greeted his mother while discussing the fertile condition of the field, now overgrown with weeds. He checked on the goats and decided to help the injured one enjoy the fresh air. Moments like this reminded him how useful his reincarnated abilities could be in daily life. With ease, he lifted the goat, demonstrating his superhuman strength, one of the powers granted to him. Carrying the animal casually, he strolled along, drawing admiration for his unnatural strength from nearby villagers. Beiji reunited with Ferial, a returning adventurer apprentice who had just come back from burial. She expressed frustration over his habit of treating her like a child, despite being younger. Her irritation grew as Beiji teased her about childhood memories she wanted to forget. Despite appearing 15, Bei's retained memories made peers feel more like younger siblings, or even daughters. Feeling awkward and confused, he decided to head home, greeted warmly by his little sister. Bei noticed the meal Chapel prepared and asked about their younger brother Tuta, who hadn't returned. Tuta arrived with a rabbit, proudly fulfilling his role as the family's main meat hunter. Chapel reminded them they already had plenty of meat and suggested sharing with the village pharmacist. Tuta eagerly asked for a magic lesson, reminding Bei of his forgotten promise to teach them. Reflecting on his powers, Bei recalled the remaining 2 abilities granted were both magic-related. Among his gifts, Bei possessed limitless magical ability, granted by the god without restriction or constraint. Using that power, he created durable stone fences, impressing his siblings with simple, yet effective spells. Tuta, inspired by Bei's strength and kindness, dreamed of becoming just as dependable one day, eager to learn. The 2 asked for guidance, prompting Bei to suggest practicing without fear. Confused by his vague advice, they stared blankly, unsure what control even meant. Bei realized the kids didn't understand the concept of control, and struggled to simplify his explanation, rather than overthink it. He encouraged them to imagine something, and simply try casting again. Chapel excitedly showed her dual element spell, surprising everyone with her natural magical talent. Even Tuta, though younger, displayed strong wind and lightning abilities, far beyond expectations. Pleased by their progress, Bei acknowledged their growth, feeling he had nothing left to teach. Bei demonstrated basic magic control, showing how changing the image in one's mind altered the result. He assigned specific training tasks. Chapel would draw a square in mid-air, and Tuta would create wind. After providing an example, he encouraged them to mimic the spell using their own power. Tuta responded enthusiastically, promising to give it his all without overexerting himself. As training paused, Bei left them to practice, returning to handle his remaining responsibilities. Through practice, children without grimoires develop their own magic styles by visualizing and refining internal images. Bei enjoyed the freedom magic offered, especially when recreating techniques from his favorite anime heroes. His 3rd divine gift, a mana-free magic barrier, could be summoned at will without effort. This adaptable barrier could take any form, making it the most practical ability he possessed. Aware of its danger, he chose to keep this power secret, even from those outside family. Chapel called Bei for lunch, reminding him to join the family meal as she came downstairs. While gathering supplies, Bei asked her to cook deer stew for Grandma and prepare meat portions. Before leaving, he told Chapel and Tutoda to protect the village using magic if needed. Using a wagon, Bei headed to Colony, the central village area, far from his mountain home. On the way, he met Salaberry, a refined village girl who greeted him with her usual sass. Salaberry insisted on joining Bei to Colony, masking concern with a bold, demanding attitude. During the wagon ride, Beiji mentioned Ferial's return, prompting a quiet reaction from Salaberry. Her vague response left Bei puzzled, especially since the 2 girls were supposed to be friends. Unsure how to interpret her mood, he reflected on how hard it was to read girls. He sighed. Realizing all his childhood friends Fariel, Salaberry, and Talala were considered the mountain's three beauties, Bae asked why Salaberry was heading to colony, and she proudly claimed it was for work. He teased her about studying, which quickly triggered her suspicion that he was thinking something rude. She claimed to have finished reading, but Bae clearly doubted her answer. Questioning her sincerity, gently, he reminded her to study consistently. Just a little each day could lead to progress. Embarrassed yet honest, Salaberry admitted her desire to become as smart as Bae one day. Salaberry grew frustrated as Bae laughed, accusing him of mocking her dislike for studying. Worn out by the teasing and noise, Bae sighed at how lively the day had become. Looking up at the sky, he accepted that his peaceful life wouldn't stay quiet for long. Bae arrived at Kalea Colony, unsure how he'd spend his days in the peaceful settlement. Chores quickly filled his schedule, delivering goods, supplying firewood, and checking on apprentice adventurers. Salaberry interrupted, urging him to take a break and accompany her on a shopping trip. Rather than accept, Bae pointed out her neglected duties and reminded her to prepare for her job. Their argument paused when the general store grandma called for Bae's help, and he willingly stepped forward. Bae quickly dodged Salaberry's request, claiming urgent business and leaving her frustrated at his sudden escape. Inside the store, Grandma asked for extra meat, hinting at something unusual happening recently. She explained that a broken ship had anchored nearby, its crew buying food in bulk. Though mildly concerned, Bae noted the short time frame and decided it wasn't an issue yet. Still, he questioned the logistics, estimating 30 men aboard and wondering how they're all being fed. Bae explained the village's food supply could run out if the ship crew overstayed their welcome. He warned that ignoring the issue might cause conflict between struggling villagers and the visiting crew. Alarmed by the risk, Grandma dashed out, determined to take action before things got worse. Bae sighed at her impulsiveness, then decided to check the harbor himself just to be sure. Reaching the coast, he was surprised. The ship wasn't nearly as large as he had imagined. Bae was stunned by the sheer size of the ship, large enough to resemble an island. Noticing the marked crates, he identified the name, Bazivador Company, a powerful and elite merchant group. He sighed, realizing the situation involved another influential figure with ties beyond ordinary noble power. The village chief appeared suddenly, urging Bae to follow without question for an urgent discussion. Apparently, Grandma had already pressed the chief to negotiate her energy and resolve still unshockably fierce. Bae was greeted by Legier, a smiling representative from the powerful Bazivador Company. The village chief praised Bae's talents, hoping he could handle the unexpected negotiations himself. Without hesitation, Legier requested that Bae hand over his horse to the company. Bae was stunned by the bold demand, but Legier assured him compensation would be provided. He silently fumed, realizing the man underestimated him and saw the village as something to buy. Bae demanded 100 gold coins, making it clear he wouldn't accept anything less for his horse. He calmly explained the price, justifying the cost based on his livelihood and tax obligations. His confident reasoning highlighted the real impact such a loss would have on his daily life. Legier grew flustered, but a voice interrupted. His superior appeared to scold him for emotional weakness. Barryvon Bazivador, the company's intimidating leader, stepped forward and offered an apology with a composed smile. Bae casually responded to the merchant leader, asking if the horse deal still stood. Suddenly, the confident leader bowed his head, desperately begging Bae for help. He admitted the company's survival depended on outside aid, no matter how humiliating the request. Despite his surprise, Bae acknowledged the man's humility and agreed to lend his knowledge. With time running short before nightfall, both parties prepared to continue the discussion elsewhere. Bae invited Barivon to stay the night, and the merchant gladly accepted the generous offer. The guest was stunned. He hadn't expected such luxurious accommodations in a rural village. Dinner surprised him further. The gyoza left a lasting impression on his seasoned palate. He admitted the crew overspent on supplies after long months at sea with limited food. Understanding the issue, Bae requested restraint, next time to avoid upsetting the village's delicate balance. Bae shifted the conversation, asking whether the ship's damage extended below the waterline. He found it odd that such a heavily damaged ship could still function after so long. Jokingly, he credited his knowledge to books and secretly, documentaries from his past life. After thinking it through, he estimated 3 days would be enough to fix the vessel. With confidence, Bae proposed a 5-day plan to solve every issue the crew was facing. Bae described his plan using layered magic barriers, confident they'd outperform traditional wooden repairs. Though intrigued, Barivon admitted he couldn't grasp all the details and asked how to repay him. Bae reassured him, hinting that the merchant might be able to help in his own way. He pointed out the tax hike by the new lord, suggesting Berryvond intervene for the villagers' sake. With a smirk, Bay approved the idea, joking that Berryvond's version of thorough might exceed his own. Berryvond was amazed that Bay completed the repair in just 5 days, exactly as promised. They exchanged farewells with a firm handshake, parting on good terms as trusted friends. Shortly after, someone noted how unusual it was for Beatty to befriend such an older man. At the harbor, Bae ran into Nerephilia, the guild receptionist, who stopped by while shopping. She warned him about increased goblin sightings near Asaraki Mountain and the caravan attack threat. Bae promised to hunt goblins soon, though Nerephilia warned him not to overdo it. While thinking about the threat, he spotted Tauta heading toward the dangerous mountain path. As Bay approached, cloaked strangers suddenly appeared and apologized for trailing the boy. One of the robed figures addressed a companion, seemingly recognizing someone named Vibel Fakfani. Bay admitted his identity, cautiously asking who the unexpected group actually was. The robed strangers introduced themselves as Allitera, Salela, and Vanis. Takala, their leader, revealed they were part of a C-rank party called Light of Darkest Night. Rather than visit the nearby inn, they wished to stay at Bay's house and offered to pay. Bay smiled and proposed a trade lodging in exchange for their adventure stories. Takala and her party cheerfully agreed, promising to share every detail until his curiosity was satisfied. Allitera stood calmly at the doorway, quietly welcoming the guests into Bay's home without hesitation. Bay grabbed his sword, ready to head out for goblin hunting, as threats increased nearby. Despite protests from the girl, he reminded her of chores, ignoring her pleas to tag along. Arriving at the forest's edge, Bay stayed alert, wary of a potential large-scale goblin attack. A strange burning scent drifted through the air. He followed it cautiously, sensing danger up ahead. Explosions erupted. Bay shielded himself immediately, realizing too late someone had triggered a trap. Bay rushed toward the sound and spotted someone thrown violently through the trees ahead of him. He found Tuta injured on the ground, barely conscious, whispering about an unknown attacker. A dark figure emerged from the trees, mocking them both, and promising their death without hesitation. The attacker introduced himself dramatically as Rick Sama, flaunting confidence and power with a theatrical pose. Bay watched cautiously, realizing Rix was behind Tuta's injury and too dangerous to underestimate. Bay observed the arrogant attacker with suspicion, questioning whether he was anything more than a goblin. Mocking whispers followed as he and Tuta casually discussed the enemy's brute force approach and magic. Rix exploded in rage, shouting threats and vowing to crush them for their insolence, remaining composed. Bay launched forward, shattering the ground and advancing with overwhelming force. Rix flew back from the impact, stunned by Bay's sudden, crushing counterattack. Bay stood unfazed, watching Rix slam into his barrier without the slightest bit of caution. Tuta expressed concern. If Rix had allies, the village might be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Considering the threat, Beatty decided to entrust the situation to more capable hands going forward. At a nearby home, 3 women reacted with surprise upon hearing they'd been given a quest. Bay smiled warmly, asking them to investigate the forest and take over the goblin hunt. The team requested supplies, water, weapons, and rations before departing on their mission to scout the forest. Along with maps and a guide, Allitera volunteered to step out briefly before preparations finished. Bay noticed her elusive presence, realizing he hadn't sensed her approach at all. Her distant behavior stemmed from a troubled past, forming an emotional barrier between herself and others. Despite that, her teammate reassured Bay Allitera was kind and trustworthy, just slow to open up. Bay quietly walked through the moonlit forest, eyes scanning the surroundings with calm curiosity. Allitera moved silently ahead, her cloak blending into the glowing woods filled with scattered herbs. He greeted her with a smile, casually explaining his presence in the forest at night. While kneeling, Bay mentioned how moonlight herbs made potent healing ointment when picked at this hour. Holding a leaf, he revealed his intention to make medicine for the injured Tuta. Bay knelt in the grass, surprised, when Allitera pointed out the herb he chose wasn't suitable. She calmly recommended another combination, one for boiling, one for flavor to better heal Tuta's wounds. The remedy came from her family's tradition, and she confidently vouched for its effectiveness. With a gentle smile, Allitera expressed quiet satisfaction in being helpful. Sitting under the moonlight, Bay admired her insight and asked to call her by name. Allitera turned away, revealing her dislike for her own name and the burden it carried. She quietly explained that Allitera meant raven black darkness in the ancient elvish tongue. To elves, her black hair marked her as cursed and ill omen she could never escape. She admitted being a half-elf, believing isolation was best for both her and Bay. Ignoring the prejudice, Bei softly admired her hair, surprising her with unexpected kindness. Bei responded without hesitation, reducing Alitera's identity to something far simpler than she expected. He reassured her that her past didn't define her, and her friends accepted her. His sincere words caught her off guard, especially when he called her beautiful. She grew flustered, warning him not to tease his elders, though clearly moved by his honesty. The next morning, Alitera timidly greeted Bei, her demeanor now slightly more open than before. Alitera entered the room, flustered by teasing remarks as others joked about her bond with Tuta. Tuta smiled brightly, thanking her for the herbs and happily, reporting his pain was gone. She returned the smile warmly, expressing her gratitude for his words and cheerful recovery. Alitera touched her chest, feeling lighter as she recalled Bei's encouragement to hold her head high. Standing with new confidence, she thanked Bei sincerely, eyes filled with quiet strength and clarity. In a quiet village, metal clanged from Bei's workshop where he crafted weapons in secret. Visitors were shocked by his skill, amazed that someone so humble forged blades better than stores. Behind a hidden door lay racks of swords and axes, more than anyone had imagined. Whispers filled the air as they discovered silver-plated armor and finely forged iron shields inside. With a proud smile, Bei offered a sword, finally revealing the hidden fruits of his hobby. Curious about the weapon's quality, she tested its weight and balance with cautious hands. Without hesitation, she swung with precision, slicing cleanly through the target as Bei watched silently, impressed by the result. She smiled brightly, while the others looked on in amazement. Another girl stepped forward, eager to find something suited to her as well. Despite being a mage, responding with a grin, Bei revealed a beautifully crafted defensive cane tailored perfectly for her role. Though it lacked charm, the cane's defensive power impressed her, shielding against attacks and poison alike. Another girl pouted, craving a unique weapon of her own and begging Bei for something special. To her delight, he presented 6 enchanted kunai, each infused with powerful time-use magic spells. As laughter filled the room, Beatty turned his attention toward the quiet, composed girl named Alitera. She politely declined, already equipped with a trusted staff and bow fit for her spirit magic. Surprised, Bei learned Alitera was the strongest among them, second only to the highest ranked. To support their journey, he offered a mysterious item, piquing curiosity with its odd shape. Holding it confidently, Bei revealed the item's purpose. It was a portable toilet for adventurers. He explained its origin, made for a female party member concerned about privacy on travels. To solve the issue, a bracelet was introduced activating its camouflage function, provided instant relief. A shimmering field appeared as the bracelet activated, forming an invisible, odor-proof toilet space inside. Bei grinned with pride, pleased by their reactions, and cheerfully thanked everyone for their support. Holding a bag of coins, he reminded them he couldn't afford to give gear for free. Before parting, Bei asked about their next move. Goblin hunting was the team's immediate plan. With confidence, Alitera promised to fulfill his quest, assuring him they'd return successful and safe. Bei smiled and placed his trust in Alitera, praising her as a dependable professional adventurer. Waves of laughter followed as the party departed, while comments about Bei's charm echoed light-heartedly. Left alone, he gazed at his peaceful home, realizing how hectic things had become lately. With no urgent tasks left, he decided to rest under the open sky, finally relaxing. Suddenly a voice called out in panic, interrupting his calm. Something had clearly gone wrong. A villager rushed over in panic, reporting that goblins had appeared at the lumberyard. Without hesitation, Bei left the house in Chappelle's care and prepared to handle the threat. Using his magic, he launched himself swiftly into the air, heading straight toward the danger. Onlookers stared in awe, realizing once again how extraordinary Bei's strength and abilities truly were. Without slowing down, he sprinted ahead, focused entirely on confronting the looming goblin menace. Bei arrived at the lumberyard and found Uncle Zabar tending to an injured worker. Zabar explained that the goblins seemed unusually coordinated, attacking in a well-formed group with weapons. After treating the wounded man, Bei advised rest, assuring them it was no trouble at all. While speaking, he noticed Zabar's alarmed expression and sensed an ominous presence behind him. Before he could react, Zabar shouted a warning. Danger was closing in from behind Bei. Aya's surprise attack hurled Bei to the ground, pain surging through him as dust rose. An ogre stepped forward, impressed Bei survived the hit, and taunted him with a flaming fist. Bei instructed Zabar to warn the others, insisting he could handle the situation alone. The ogre threatened to tear him apart, grinning cruelly as he advanced with confidence. Despite the tension, Bei smiled quietly, preparing to counter the incoming punch without flinching. Bei launched forward with precise speed, catching the ogre off guard with a powerful strike. Frustrated, the ogre lashed out wildly, shouting as Bei continued to evade each furious blow. Calmly raising a hand, Bei signaled readiness, eyes sharp and posture completely unwavering. Their fists collided in a dazzling clash. Bei blocked effortlessly, even complementing the ogre's strength mid-fight. Realizing the truth, the ogre trembled. Calling Bei a monster, an accusation Bei accepted with a grin. Unexpectedly, the ogre stood upright in full armor, leaving everyone stunned by its sudden transformation. Excited by the result, Bei cheerfully explained he planned to use the captured ogre for labor. Alitera stared at him in silence, radiating quiet hostility while Bei nervously tried to explain. The others watched with concern, worried that Alitera's anger might now become lethal for Bei. Taking a cautious step forward, she advanced slowly, ignoring Bei's plea to resolve the matter peacefully. Alitera confronted Bei, upset after rushing over, only to find him joking with the captured ogre. Lowering her voice, she questioned if he truly understood how they felt during the chaos. Tears welled in her eyes as she asked if he could grasp their worry and fear. She pounded on him in frustration, shouting how deeply concerned she had been. Relieved, she smiled through tears, grateful he was safe, while Bei thanked her with a blush. Bei was warned strictly by the village elder to avoid any reckless actions during his scouting. Before departing, he promised to return before dark, though everyone sensed the rising tension. Rumors about monsters lurking near the village spread rapidly, causing unease among the residents. Despite patrols by Alitera's team and other adventurers, the threat persisted beyond their efforts. Villagers remained anxious, their safety uncertain. Even with increased vigilance and watchful planning, Bei planned to revisit the ogre he previously captured, hoping for useful information this time. Though warned again to avoid violence, he calmly reassured her he understood the limits. Troubled by the increasing monster appearances, he considered using force to uncover the truth. Suspicion grew. He sensed the monsters might actually be connected or even acquainted with each other. Pushing doubts aside, Bei decided to question them directly once he reached the prison. Bei stumbled upon a mysterious girl lying unconscious on the ground, her presence completely unexpected. Still motionless, she showed no signs of injury, which made the situation feel even stranger. Doubt crept in. He questioned whether this was a trap and sensed something was off. Cautiously approaching, he was relieved when she stirred and began questioning her own condition. Awkward silence followed until she addressed him, confused and embarrassed about fainting in that place. Suddenly, the girl's eyes lit up with a hypnotic glow as she urged him to look. Startled, Bei noticed the strange shine in her eyes. Unsure of what she was doing, realizing the danger, he quickly identified them as magic eyes and acted without hesitation. His suspicion proved right. She attempted to use magic, but his preset barrier blocked the effect. As she tried to escape, Bei responded swiftly, determined not to let her get away. To Bei's shock, the girl suddenly revealed wings and launched into the air to escape. She landed atop a tree, her transformation catching him completely off guard with surprise. No exposed, she floated mid-air. Her appearance confirmed she was a succubus in disguise. She introduced herself as Charny, visibly frustrated that her magic eyes had no effect. Tensions rose when she demanded Rex's return and accused Bei of breaking Rin's horn. Bei confirmed his suspicion as Charny fiercely declared her loyalty to her captured comrade. While keeping his distance, he casually commented on the cuteness of Charny's suspiciously flashy outfit. Flattered by the compliment, Charny joyfully explained that her master made the dress specially. Proudly, she praised her master's kindness and shared about the many stylish outfits she received. However, the mood shifted when Charny revealed she wasn't actually a girl, leaving Bei stunned. Bei reacted internally to the truth with disbelief, while Charny blushed from his accidental praise. Without warning, he cast a binding spell to stop any further distractions or escape. Firmly, he explained he had no time left for discussions about fashion preferences. Charny ended up locked behind bars, shouting complaints while Bei sat nearby, unmoved. Later that night, Bei reflected with frustration. He still knew nothing about Charny's mysterious master. While lying awake, Bei pondered Charny's identity, unsure whether to call him a succubus or incubus. Suddenly, Chappelle burst into the room, waking Bei with urgent shouts and panic. She reported that Tuta still hadn't returned, concern clearly written across her face, retracing events. She mentioned sunset passed over an hour ago and handed Bei a clue. Reading the message tied to the arrow, Bei recognized it immediately. It was a challenge. Bei offered Shapil a warm smile, assuring her that Tuta would return soon. He then calmed Oken, confidently stating that everything would be fine and under control. However, deep down, he struggled with doubt, sensing that danger might be approaching them directly. As expected, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Someone had already arrived. To his surprise, a polite, Baudai, wearing slime appeared, apologizing for the late night visit. Bei was puzzled by the talking slime's appearance and politely asked about its identity. Introducing itself as Bambil, the slime claimed to be the butler and guardian of its master. Bambil requested the release of Rex and Charney, offering compensation and admitting their group's fault. Bei criticized the request, pointing out their prior aggression and calling it hypocritical, despite the offer. Bei made clear he didn't want money and began considering his terms. Bambil proposed a favor, based deal his group would obey and assist whenever needed. Bei accepted with a smile, sealing the agreement with a warm drink and handshake. Unexpectedly, Bambil made another request, asking Bei to meet his mysterious master. The slime explained the master was a dungeon lord currently facing internal troubles. Bei agreed to consider helping, offering conditional support depending on the nature of the problem. Bei agreed to help, but only after demanding an apology for harming his younger brother. Charney tearfully embraced Bambil while Rex hesitated, reluctant to express his gratitude. Bambil quickly silenced Rex's protest, making both prisoners thank Bei properly. Before departure, Charney offered to guide Bei to the dungeon as promised. On the way, a group emerged from hiding. Bei recognized their presence instantly and confronted them. Bei asked the group why they were following, prompting them to express their concern for him. Bambil welcomed their company, assuring that more of Bei's comrades were always accepted. With everyone in agreement, Bei smiled and suggested they begin their journey together. The group entered the dungeon, cautiously heading toward a meeting with the dungeon master. An explanation followed. Dungeon masters control all monsters, and some wield dangerously strong magic. Bei and the others stood before a strange structure, unsure if it was a tower or ruin. Curious, one of the girls asked if Bei recognized it from somewhere. He admitted he did, though, only from his previous life. A strange slime in a bow tie visited Bei and invited him to a mysterious dungeon. Suspicious of the wording, Bei quietly questioned whether the message truly made sense at all. He tried rationalizing the situation, wondering if he had misheard the word entirely. Apologizing to his startled companion, Bei followed the slime deeper into the unexpected destination. Arriving at a Toki mansion, he realized it was no dungeon, just a peculiar misunderstanding. Bei was surprised to meet Kyuko, a cheerful woman claiming to be the mansion's gatekeeper. With a confident smile, she revealed her origin as a homunculus created by the master herself. Curious guests gathered, shocked to see such a rare being casually working as staff. One companion warned Bei to stay alert. The mansion's true master was not easily handled. Despite the warning, Bei sensed powerful magic and knew the homunculus creator wasn't to be underestimated. Bei entered a cluttered room while the slime searched for its elusive master among the mess. A joyful cry echoed as a young boy named Tuta suddenly ran toward Bei, calling out. Tears welled up in the boy's eyes as he clung tightly to his older brother's chest. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A crazed woman stormed in, yelling wildly, while an attacker emerged from the shadows. Reacting instantly, the elf girl leapt forward, clashing blades to protect the master from certain danger. Tensions flared as the elf held her blade while the slime tried to defuse the situation. Unbothered by the chaos, the master rambled about her crush and ignored the rising conflict around her. Fascinated by the elf's ears, she charged at her, prompting urgent pleas for calm from the slime. Disturbed by her behavior, Bei turned away with Tuta, clearly sensing danger and deciding to leave. As they parted, the elf promised to handle things, while Bei offered reluctant support and quiet concern. The woman fixated on the sleeping boy, her strange thoughts stirring suspicion once again. Reacting swiftly, Bei kicked her away, ordering her to keep her distance from his brother. Sitting down in disbelief, he muttered about the absurdity of meeting someone like her. His suspicions were confirmed when she recognized him as another reincarnated person like herself. Peeling fruit calmly, Bei acknowledged the nostalgic items that hinted at their shared past lives. Bei sighed, realizing the girl sharing his reincarnated status acted more like a troublesome menace. Finally introducing herself, she requested to be called Irina. Though her mood had clearly soured, Bei responded with his nickname, explaining that his real name was too long to bother using. Irina admired his name, insisted on calling him Vidono, and hinted at needing his help. With sincere eyes, Irina pleaded for protection, revealing she was being targeted by a dangerous enemy. Irina explained that she was constantly attacked whether by heroes or monsters for many different reasons. Her troubles, she claimed, stemmed from her very existence and the wish she made upon reincarnation. Among her requests, she had asked to keep her exact physical body from her previous life. This led to a shocking outcome. She now lived as one of the undead. Despite her human appearance, Irina confessed her true race, a lich with monstrous traits and abilities. Irina revealed that, as a lich, she could only eat within her dungeon using energy drain. Despite the grim details, she cheerfully explained her wish's freedom to be a shut-in and summon allies. Bei snapped in frustration, scolding her harshly for being unable to protect herself properly. Carrying his brother, he decided to leave, claiming there was nothing he could help her with. Desperate, Irina clung to him, begging Vidono not to walk away from her situation. The slime quietly interrupted, pleading with Bei to help their struggling and misunderstood master, Irina. It explained their hardships wandering endlessly until they finally found this peaceful sanctuary they hoped to protect. Irina looked shocked, while the slime earnestly begged Bei to lend even a little support. After a pause, Bei relented and agreed to assist them with their difficult situation. He made it clear he'd offer guidance only. The actual effort would still be their responsibility. A subordinate burst in, shouting an urgent warning as his panicked footsteps echoed down the hall. Recognizing Bei, the man hesitated, revealing his identity as the goblin they'd encountered previously. He reported that orcs were approaching the dungeon, steadily advancing toward their location. Hearing this, Irina screamed in horror, recalling disturbing past encounters with the vulgar creatures. Collapsed in despair, she was reminded how those orcs had obsessively stalked her due to her body. Elytra arrived in a rush, warning Bei that orcs were dangerous and urging him to leave, instead of retreating. Bei calmly asked about the enemy's numbers and tactical strength from the report. Though he refused to fight directly, he hinted that there were still ways he could assist. Surprising everyone, Bei rolled out a rack of restraints with confident precision and clarity. He instructed them to use the tools to capture the orcs alive for Irina's long-term sustenance. Irina lit up with joy as she ordered preparations, urging her monsters to act quickly. Charney, arriving at the scene, questioned the situation but was immediately roped into the plan. After a desperate plea from Irina and encouragement from Bei, Charney reluctantly accepted her role. With renewed determination, she promised to protect her master and joined the operation without hesitation. Once things were in motion, Bei quietly stepped back, confident they could manage without him. Bei stepped out, wishing them luck in the upcoming battle with the orcs before leaving. With a smile he waved goodbye, assuring them he'd return to check on things later. Irina watched him go, smiling warmly and expressing her gratitude with sincere appreciation. Outside, Bei laid out a long sigh as the moonlit path stretched quietly ahead, reflecting aloud. He admitted that despite being a monster, Irina was strangely easy to accept. Tota finally stirred awake as the group paused to check on his condition. His stomach rumbled, and he quietly confessed his hunger to his older brother. Bei reassured him with a smile, promising food awaited them at home. After preparing for their forest patrol, the women bid farewell, leaving Bei to tend to village chores. Laundry hung under the sun, and the girls cheerfully enjoyed the calm weather while chatting beside the clothesline. A line of approaching carriages soon caught their attention, breaking the quiet routine of the morning. Recognizing the lead figure, Bei realized it was Avel, the merchant, returning with unexpected company. Surprised, Bei noted Avel's large entourage, unlike his usual solo visits to the peaceful countryside village. Avel encouraged his companion forward, prompting Bei to face the unfamiliar boy standing quietly beside him. With visible nervousness, the boy introduced himself as Box, Avel's younger brother, bowing with great formality. Avel gently explained Box's role, asking the villagers to support him as he began his merchant journey. Smiling, Avel revealed his retirement plans, aiming to settle down and open a shop in the village. Bei, surprised by the announcement, questioned the decision. While a new figure quietly approached the group, Bei was stunned when the unfamiliar girl, Serenilla, introduced herself as Avel's wife. With a proud yet awkward smile, Avel explained the sudden development he had recently married her. Startled by the news, Bei quickly congratulated the couple, scolding Avel for hiding such a big event. The cheerful announcement caused a stir, drawing attention and unexpected reactions from the other villagers. While the guests were invited to rest, Box politely excused himself for a pending business meeting. Box asked Bei for help reaching the village center, hinting at something important he wished to discuss. They sat down together as Box shared his wish to surprise Avel and Serenilla with a celebration. Deeply touched, Bae agreed to help and suggested planning something grand to honor their relationship. Plans quickly expanded, organizing a wedding, making a dress, and inviting the entire village for a joint party. Spotting Talala nearby, Bae called out, hoping she could assist in making the surprise possible. Bae asked Tola for a favor, crafting a bridal dress quickly for Aval's surprise celebration. Enthusiastic, Talala agreed instantly, confident she had the perfect material ready for the task. Box remained curious about the tailor, and Bae assured him she was a skilled childhood friend. A voice offered unexpected help. Someone nearby had overheard and wanted to assist with preparations. Bae parted with Box, then turned toward the trees, confronting Salaberry hiding silently in the shadows. Salaberry glared coldly at Bae, questioning his sudden busyness and the reason for her own irritation. Trying to shift the mood, Bae complimented her new hairstyle, which caught her pleasantly off guard. She proudly welcomed the praise, beaming as she urged him to compliment her more. Without warning, Bae asked if she could style Saranilla's hair for the upcoming wedding. Confused, but understanding, Salaberry realized who Saranilla was and quietly accepted Bae's flashy wedding plans. Salaberry agreed to help, immediately taking charge and insisting they notify everyone without wasting time. Determined to do things properly, she reminded Bae that a wedding deserved full effort and sincerity. Back home, Bae was greeted warmly by the others, preparing lunch, cheerful and unaware of the plans. As they chatted, Bae mentioned Box's absence and cautiously addressed the knife still in her hand. Realizing her mistake, she panicked and apologized, embarrassed for unintentionally scaring them with the blade. Bae commented on Saranilla's unique personality, prompting Aval to reveal she was actually a noble's daughter. Jokingly, Bae teased Aval about marrying into status, noting Saranilla's refined aura. Aval explained she left her family to pursue medicine and was disowned for following that dream. Moved by her resolve, Aval admitted he fell in love with her strength and determination. Grinning, Bae offered to build them a house as a wedding present, surprising everyone with the gesture. Bae accepted the request, promising to consult the village chief and choose a location near their home. The suggestion of adding a clinic surprised Saranilla, her excitement immediately shining through her reaction. Although the project would take time, her long-held dream of owning a clinic felt suddenly within reach. Watching quietly, Bae smiled with confidence, hinting that another surprise still awaited the couple. Both Aval and Saranilla stared blankly, sensing something unexpected was about to unfold. While work continued quietly, Bae noticed movement nearby as someone returned to the village. A small group arrived home, relieved and comforted by the warm welcome waiting for them. Their relief turned to confusion when a newly built house stood where nothing existed earlier. The visitors were introduced as adventurers temporarily staying under Bae's care. Shock spread as their identity was revealed, leaving Bae stunned by the unexpected reunion. Bae listened as exaggerated rumors spread, turning the visiting adventurers into legendary figures beyond their true deeds. Embarrassed by the praise, the group downplayed their reputation while Bae reacted with awkward disbelief. The moment shifted when help was requested, pulling Bae back into preparations as familiar faces returned. Suspicion followed quickly, and it became clear something important was being kept hidden from him. Just as the tension peaked, Box arrived late, unknowingly stepping into the middle of unfolding plans. Villagers arrived in high spirits, bringing gifts and congratulations as word of the marriage spread quickly. The surprise was revealed to Aval, who learned the entire village had been invited to celebrate. Standing calmly, Bae credited Box as the one who sparked the idea behind the grand gathering. Stepping forward, Box presented flowers, wishing happiness for Aval and Saranilla with sincerity. Overcome with emotion, Aval struggled to hold back tears as the celebration truly began. Standing before him, the moment arrived for Aval to face his bride, guided forward by quiet encouragement. Saranilla appeared in her wedding dress, calm and radiant, petals drifting as the scene grew still. Pride spread among those who prepared everything, admiring how beautifully the dress suited her. Overwhelmed, Aval expressed gratitude toward Box, Bae and the villagers who made everything possible. With the ceremony ready to begin, Bae stepped forward, signaling the celebration could finally start. As petals fell, Aval and Saranilla embraced, their wedding celebration beginning with shared joy together. Inside the unfinished house, Bae helps organize supplies, as Aval carries boxes with quiet enthusiasm. Other helpers arrange stacks and plan placements, turning scattered materials into an orderly workspace together. Days later, the completed home stands proudly, marking a fresh start after their recent marriage. Attention shifts toward future plans as Bae reviews layouts for shops and clinics ahead today. Despite minor setbacks, patience remains, showing progress will come slowly but steadily for everyone there. Calm returns as Bei surveys the scattered goods, realizing organization still needs patience and steady effort. Curiosity draws attention toward unusual books, noticing their careful placement and unfamiliar protective coverings. Inspection reveals special treatment on the pages, suggesting preparation for handling water or harsh conditions. A new business idea takes shape, linking trade ambitions with specialized customers near the harbor. Practical agreements follow, as Bei accepts gradual profits while supporting an unconventional merchant plan. Optimism grows as Bei considers shared profits, recognizing the unusual books could attract rare customers. However, concern emerges when Bei reflects carefully, realizing a serious obstacle still remains unresolved. Attention turns toward the mermaid world, where ongoing conflict threatens stability beneath the sea. Wider circumstances become clear, showing hostile nations, shifting alliances, and rising military control underwater. Despite distance from battle zones, uncertainty lingers, forcing careful planning around trade near the harbor. Doubts surface as plans stall, making business prospects uncertain and pushing Bei toward risky alternatives. The journey leads to the harbor hut, revealing a structure designed partly beneath seawater there. Preparation continues as concerns fade, suggesting a solution involving underwater dealings is already forming nearby. Unexpected figures appear from the sea, introducing unfamiliar beings whose presence raises immediate caution slowly. Tension rises when their strange behavior confirms danger, signaling that trade may invite serious trouble. Trouble becomes obvious as hostile figures approach, forcing Bei and his companion to react quickly. Sudden attacks erupt, turning the harbor chaotic and leaving escape as the only immediate option. A desperate plunge follows, sending both into the sea despite serious limitations and rising danger. Underwater safety is secured when a protective method allows survival beneath the surface briefly. Even then, pursuit continues relentlessly, proving the situation will not end without further confrontation. While fleeing underwater, Bei searches for refuge, guiding them toward a nearby military residence. Sudden impact strikes during the escape, leaving Bei injured as danger interrupts their path. Recovery begins slowly, awareness returning while pain confirms the damage taken moments earlier. Unexpected help arrives when a mermaid appears, revealing concern and responsibility for the incident. Introductions follow calmly, marking the start of cooperation as they move deeper toward safety together. Concern spreads as Beatty realizes pursuit continues, with enemies still tracking their movements underwater nearby. Urgency rises when danger is explained, making retreat toward land seem like the safest option. Revelations emerge about an invading empire, confirming the threat extends far beyond a simple chase. Attention shifts toward Baby's involvement, raising questions about why powerful forces target him. Specifically, gratitude follows, as past assistance is acknowledged, showing his support altered the balance of war. Information becomes clear as the Empire targets Bae, tracing the powerful equipment back to its source. Understanding settles in, confirming the pursuit is deliberate and carefully planned by enemy forces. Guilt overwhelms the Mermaid Guardian, burdened by failure to protect the assigned location. Reassurance follows, shifting focus towards survival and preventing the situation from escalating further. Resolve forms as Bae considers driving the Empire away, despite overwhelming numbers and looming danger. Calm confidence replaces fear, as Bae reveals he never planned direct confrontation from the start. Instructions are given quietly, sending others into hiding while danger gathers nearby underwater. Trust grows among companions, as familiarity with Bae's thinking reassures those watching him closely. Certainty settles when confidence in Bae's abilities outweighs lingering worry about the coming conflict. Meanwhile, enemy forces advance aggressively, spreading destruction that signals the situation is rapidly escalating. Observing their behavior calmly, Bae approaches the intruders, recognizing them as reckless bandits abusing power. Realization spreads among the attackers, as they identify Bae as the source behind the equipment. Confidence remains unshaken while Bae advances, forcing hesitation through sheer presence and control. Violence erupts when the enemies strike, yet their assault fails to break Bae's composure. A sudden countermeasure traps the attackers, triggering panic and retreat as their advantage collapses. A massive net seals the area, capturing the attackers as Bae calmly surveys the successful restraint. With the threat neutralized, he considers the next step while the trapped figures struggle uselessly. Observers react with shock and anger, misunderstanding the situation and directing hostility toward Bae. Tension eases. Once the misunderstanding clears, revealing the act was controlled rather than cruel. Authority takes over the prisoners, allowing the group to withdraw as the day quietly comes to an end. After the conflict ends, a dropped item is noticed, drawing attention back to unfinished business. Surprise spreads as the object is revealed to be a book found beneath the sea. Plans resurface regarding trade with mermaids, while doubts about selling and timing remain. Instead of payment, cooperation is offered, proposing help from the surface during recovery. Understanding grows between them, as kindness and continued contact shape a calmer future ahead. Light-hearted teasing follows, surprising the mermaid and revealing Bei's casual attitude after resolving underwater trouble. Confusion lingers as Aval watches quietly, unsure how to respond to Bei's unexpected humor there. Bei's plan to enter a dangerous dungeon raised immediate concern from a startled elf companion. Despite warnings, Bei calmly explained his promise to protect the group until they gained strength. While hesitant, Tuta stepped forward, declaring his wish to join, surprising everyone with his determination. Clutching his shirt, the boy admitted his fear, but chose to pursue strength regardless. Inspired, the elf smiled proudly, vowing to do her best alongside Bei's brave little brother. Concerned about the upcoming dungeon trip, Allitera volunteered to join Bei and the young boy. A sudden intrusion shattered the moment, as a dazed woman staggered forward, eyes spinning wildly. Her chaotic energy startled everyone, prompting Allitera to intervene while the boy hid behind her cautiously. Bei greeted the woman VI with a smile, asking her to compose herself before continuing their talk. With unexpected calm, V explained her purpose. She discovered a way to shield them from danger. Bei calmly asked VI to explain her plan, prompting her to excitedly reveal a bold idea. According to her, the first step was building an underground town as the foundation. To everyone's surprise, she declared Arena would become the ruler of the new country. Bei supported the vision, proposing trade through farming and livestock to fund their defense. His suggestion included building a tunnel to the port and partnering with mermaids for trade. Vi reacted with dramatic shock to the mermaid tunnel plan, likening it to anime scenarios. Overwhelmed with excitement, she declared her readiness to help dig. Fists clenched in determination, Bei smiled and redirected her, explaining that she had a more important mission ahead. He urged Arena to stop depending on others and start working independently through training. Panicked, she reminded him she was undead and sunlight would literally turn her to ash. Bei responded bluntly to Vic's excuse, suggesting she simply work at night instead of complaining. Overwhelmed but accepting, Vi agreed to try her best, encouraged by her floating companion's cheer. Outside, Tuta challenged Bei to a race, confident his speed had finally improved through training. With a loud start, they dashed off. But Bei still easily claimed victory with a grin. Breathing heavily, Allitera caught up last and reminded Bei not to leave her behind again. Allitera panicked when a goat suddenly approached, catching her completely off guard with its stare. Bei casually noted it was shearing day as a cheerful girl named Tahala joined them. Woman filled the area, busily working with the goats as Tawala explained their village's custom. Encouraged to try, Allitera nervously refused, doubting her own skills and hesitating to participate. Unexpectedly, her friends had already completed the work, leaving her stunned by their quiet efficiency. Tawala impressed everyone with her shearing skills, though she admitted it was her first time. Leaving the group behind, Bei walked away confidently, claiming that men had different tasks to handle. While the girls chatted, Allitera reflected on Bei's odd behavior, unsure what he truly meant. Lying in the grass, Bei listed his recent accomplishments and began questioning his workload. He stared into the distance, recalling his hope for a peaceful life as a simple villager. Bei reflected on his old suffocating world and felt grateful for his new peaceful life. A rustling sound nearby caught his attention, but the breeze and calm expression returned quickly. From the bushes, an unfamiliar half-beast girl emerged. Her large eyes meeting Bei's curious gaze. Sensing her hunger, Bei offered her a cookie, assuring it was safe to eat. Watching her eat happily, he realized a single treat wasn't enough, and asked about meat. Using magic, Eliza summoned a pot, and Bei began preparing a simple meal right away. Fully satisfied, the small girl leaned back with a happy burp, eyes closed in comfort. Bei stared at the empty dish, unsure what to do as she slept beside him. A shadow loomed with glowing eyes, demanding to know Bei's intentions for his daughter. The large man introduced himself as Herbal, chief of the Sierra tribe and father to Eliza. Bei confronted Herbal about leaving Eliza alone, pointing out how weak she had been when found. Herbal remained silent, but Bei sensed there was a painful reason behind the situation. Offering support, Bei directed him to a nearby shop, vouching for someone who might help. Though curious, Bei chose not to press further, trusting Herbal had his reasons. Extending his hand, Bei expressed his belief that people should support each other during hard times, Herbal gently held Eliza, while Bay smiled in quiet understanding of the bond between them. With a grateful bow, Herbal thanked Bay before quietly disappearing into the forest shadows. Tuda approached, asking if the shearing was over, surprised to see Bay nearby again. Noticing the setting sun, Bay suggested it was time they both headed back home. With a playful grin, Bay proposed another race, instantly lighting up Tuda's eager expression. Stars streaked above as Tuda dashed ahead, determined to win this time against Bay's challenge. Chappelle eagerly pulled Bay along the grassy path, her excitement impossible to contain or resist. They greeted familiar villagers while announcing their goal, gathering plera fruits together on a short trip. Despite its sour taste, the rare fruit becomes delicious jam. It only grows on uninhabited islands. Reaching the island raised concerns. Flying with Chappelle wasn't an option, but another method was ready. A large dragon named Rukuku appeared before them, startled. The villagers realized this was their ride. Bay explained how the dragon often helped him carry cargo across to the remote island. With Chappelle urging him on, he bid farewell to the villagers and turned to leave. The dragon soared high into the sky. The villagers watched, impressed by the children's courage. Chappelle beamed beside BT as the island neared. They soon touched down on soft ground. Before exploring, Bay warned her to stay alert. Unknown dangers might still be waiting ahead. Bay followed behind, reflecting on Chappelle's energy. Her tomboyish nature often caught him off guard. She suddenly stopped, eyes wide. Something unusual had appeared beyond the trees, drawing her full attention. A strange vessel rested by the water. Bay identified it hesitantly. It resembled a modern submarine. Suspicion grew. Scattered objects and modern items hinted someone might be secretly living on the island. Their exploration halted when a stranger appeared, weapon raised, demanding to know who they were. Bay stepped forward calmly, shielding Chappelle. A sharp glare showed he wasn't fazed by the threat. The stranger yelped and ran off, embarrassed after Bay shouted about his complete lack of clothing. Clothed and remorseful, the young man returned, apologizing sincerely for the earlier misunderstanding and sudden panic. He introduced himself as Bandu Taekru, a 16-year-old from Earth, stranded here under mysterious circumstances. Bay admitted he was reincarnated too, now living peacefully in this world under the name Bay. Bay brightened at the shared origin. He urged Taekru to speak casually, since they were peers. Taekru admitted it was lonely. Living off submarine rations, he had survived quietly on the island. Chappa lit up with excitement. Her focus had shifted entirely to the strange vehicle in question. Bay asked politely on her behalf. Taekru agreed instantly, amused by the girl's curiosity and energy. Warnings were given not to break anything. Taekru reflected on his odd wish choices with regret. Takeru explained his body couldn't use magic due to retaining his original form after reincarnation. Despite having fuel and electricity, the submarine's repair function still refused to activate as expected. Bay found it odd. A gift from God should have worked without issue if truly granted. Before they could reason further, the submarine floated skyward. Chappelle had apparently activated something with magic. Excited, she explained how a wall prompt led her to pour mana, triggering the lift. The mystery became clear. Both the submarine's movement and its repair functions relied entirely on magic. Taekru lowered his gaze, realizing everything he prepared was useless. Without the ability to cast magic, regret weighed on him. He had wished without considering the magical nature of this new world. Bay reassured him gently. Meeting allies here was a fortunate twist, not something to dismiss. A hopeful proposal followed. With confidence, Bay suggested they leave the island and start anew together. Bay smiled at the sky, reminding Taekru that the world held far more than despair. Hearing those words, Taekru slowly lifted his gaze, stirred by the warmth in Bay's tone. Chapel invited him to stay over, offering kindness in return for a peek inside the submarine. Gratitude softened his expression. After everything, he whispered a quiet but heartfelt thank you. The trio returned home, where Bay introduced their new guest, and warm welcomes greeted him inside. Taekru felt warmth as the household welcomed him. The offer of a bath eased his nerves. Suddenly, Saranilla burst into the room, calling Bay's name urgently with a concerned expression. She pleaded for Bay to come immediately. Their shop was facing unexpected and serious trouble. A crowd had already gathered outside, murmuring anxiously beneath the starlit sky. News spread fast. Someone important had arrived and apparently they were expecting to meet Bay soon. A towering horned man stepped forward, humbly explaining that they had come to ask for help. He pleaded with Bay to save them, desperation clear in his voice and posture. Their village had been attacked by orcs, forcing everyone to flee and separating many families. Though reunited with his daughter, they now had nowhere left to live or rebuild a home. With sincerity, he promised repayment. Their hope now rested solely in Bei's willingness to help. Bei consulted Aval for ideas. One proposal suggested relocating them to an old underground dungeon town. However, the area was still underdeveloped. No real structures or foundations had been built yet. Building an entire village from scratch would require substantial effort, resources, and time they lacked. Faced with limited options, both men shared a moment of silent frustration over the difficult situation. Despite everything, Takru brought food to support them, joining the effort without hesitation or complaint. Bei wished they had access to vast, unused land and suddenly recalled the uninhabited island. He proposed it aloud, noting its large size, lake, and mountain. The others were shocked, turning to the chieftain. Bei asked directly if relocating to the uninhabited island was acceptable. Though the land lacked hostility, the chieftain hesitated, uncertain if his people could adapt to it. Aval objected to abandoning them, but Bei reassured everyone the idea wasn't cruel, it was hope. Bei offered to personally teach survival skills, including construction, hunting, and trade on the island. He smiled confidently and asked whether the Sirata tribe would accept pioneering the untouched land. The proposal left everyone speechless. Under the full moon, silence answered his unexpected invitation. Eliza stirred beneath the tree's shade, eyes slowly opening to the morning sun above. He glanced toward the forest's edge and mentioned they should gather with the others after breakfast. His expression turned serious as he hinted at something important he needed to discuss, setting a tone of quiet urgency. Later, a cheerful villager stepped forward to introduce himself to the group. With a wide smile, he called himself Bei and welcomed everyone. The gathering began with Bei announcing the uninhabited island frontier project. Eliza raised her hand, concern showing. She questioned the island's safety and voiced doubts shared by others. Acknowledging the concern, Bei nodded and redirected everyone's attention. He pointed to a quiet young man, assigning him the task of explaining the island's details. Caught off guard, the young man hesitated. Words failed him at first, and panic crept in. Still unsure, he stood awkwardly before the group as they sat waiting. The villagers asked carefully was the island dangerous, and had he faced any threats. With concern in their eyes, they sought honesty and clarity from someone who had first-hand experience. After a brief pause, he admitted the island posed no real danger. Although wild and untouched, it held abundant resources like edible plants and fish. The young man, though uncertain, expressed his belief that the island was livable with some adjustment. A larger man seized the moment, proclaiming the island's safety and strategic benefit. He pointed out the lack of invaders as a major advantage, appealing to the group's desire for peace. Whispers began spreading among the villagers. Doubt surfaced none of them had experience living near the sea. Bei quietly observed the crowd. The realization struck him that expecting land dwellers to accept a coastal life wouldn't be simple. Breaking the tension, he raised his voice passionately, with conviction. He urged them to view this as an opportunity for a better future. Memories of being exiled weighed heavily on the villagers, yet the hope of finally living in peace stirred something in them. Bei's proposal was repeated by another, stressing that the island could provide a life free from danger, although doubts remained, with conviction building. One of the men declared his decision. He chose to take a chance, believing this opportunity could reshape their lives. His plea was firm. Trust was all he asked for as he urged everyone to follow him, if only for now. One by one, the villagers voiced agreement. Together, they embraced the plan to rebuild their tribe and restore its greatness. Bei praised the chieftain's stirring speech, who, slightly embarrassed, admitted it had been a long time since he'd spoken that passionately. The mood lightened. Curious villagers requested to visit the island before deciding. Without hesitation, Bei pointed to Takru, suggesting he escort them. Trying to reassure him, Bei insisted it would be good training. Takru questioned the treatment but complied. Aval mentioned closing his shop for the day to meet the chieftain. Another reminded Bei not to tease Takru too much, though Bei claimed it was his way of showing affection. Switching to a business tone, the merchant requested Aval to sell the tribe's fur, hoping to support their future trade. A villager asked whether their fur could actually be sold for money. The merchant confirmed without hesitation, proudly declaring it a first-come, first-serve opportunity. Carefully calculating with his fingers, the merchant estimated one roll of fur could fetch around 5 silver coins, a surprisingly high value. The chieftain was stunned, compared to even premium goat's fur. Theirs was in higher demand due to its superior texture, making it sought after by artisans. Smiling confidently, the merchant offered to split the profits evenly. He asked that a portion of the earnings go to Bei, recognizing his efforts. Bei gratefully accepted, touched by the gesture and the tribe's appreciation. The merchant gave in with a sigh, agreeing to share part of the profit. Bei, already satisfied, teased him by wondering aloud what percentage he'd receive before anything could be sold. The tribe needed to gather and clip the furs properly. Shears moved smoothly as villagers worked together. Smiles spread across faces, and the once hesitant atmosphere turned cooperative. Nearby, Bei finally took a moment to rest beneath the trees. His calm expression suggested he felt the worst was over until a shadow approached with hesitant steps. A bearded figure emerged, requesting to help. Though the task wasn't assigned to him, he asked for work, eager to contribute to the tribe's effort. Bei stared at the bearded stranger in confusion, only now realizing he was a dwarf. The small man casually revealed he'd been with the Sirida tribe since the beginning. Curious, Bei asked if he wasn't satisfied helping with the island project. The dwarf admitted he was, but hinted that something felt lacking. Assuming the dwarf was a blacksmith, Bei enthusiastically offered to introduce him to a village smith. Taken aback, Bei asked what he actually could do. The dwarf hesitated, unsure how to respond, as the conversation shifted from confusion to curiosity. Beaming with pride, the dwarf finally announced his true skill, leather crafting. The dwarf spread his arms with pride, announcing he had made everything he was wearing himself. Lowering his gaze, the dwarf admitted that leatherwork was all he could offer. Still, he pleaded for the opportunity to be useful in some way. Beatty gently explained there were no leather workshops in the village, causing the dwarf's expression to fall. A solution came quickly. Beatty revealed he had a stockpile of unprocessed leather stored in his warehouse, hinting that there was already work waiting. Smiling, Bei ascended an offer to become his personal leather craftsman. The dwarf blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected proposal. Bei reassured the dwarf that not only would he be paid, but a house could also be arranged for him and his family if needed. Tears welled up in the dwarf's eyes. He struggled to believe someone would go so far just for him. Bei's calm gaze and quiet affirmation silenced any remaining doubts. With firm conviction, Bei declared that he wanted the dwarf. Nearby villagers watched the emotional moment unfold. The heartfelt declaration caught them off guard. While the dwarf's face turned bright red, overcome with emotion, he accepted without hesitation. Clasping Bei's hands, he promised to become his personal leather craftsman with all his heart. Bei reassured the dwarf that not only would he be paid, but a house could also be arranged for him and his family if needed. The offer was sincere and generous. Tears welled up in the dwarf's eyes. He struggled to believe someone would go so far, just for him. Bei's calm gaze and quiet affirmation silenced any remaining doubts. With firm conviction, Bei declared that he wanted the dwarf, not just as a worker, but as someone essential to his vision. Nearby villagers watched the emotional moment unfold. The heartfelt declaration caught them off guard, while the dwarf's face turned bright red. Overcome with emotion, he accepted without hesitation. Clasping Bei's hands, he promised to become his personal leather craftsman with all his heart. Takru smiled with determination, wanting to explore the world and see it with his own eyes. Bei responded warmly, clearly supportive. But a shift in tone soon followed. Suddenly, Bei stood up, his demeanor serious. He warned that the world wasn't so simple, and venturing into it wasn't something to take lightly. Listing responsibilities, Bei reminded Takru that he'd need to assemble a proper crew, fighters, a cook, and trustworthy allies to survive pirates and sea life. More than logistics, Bei pointed out a deeper issue. Takru still lacked basic knowledge about the world, making him unprepared for the journey ahead. Drawing close, Bei poked Takru's cheeks and emphasized his point. An ignorant captain would only endanger his crew. Takru, overwhelmed, could only nod nervously. Bei suggested they head to town the next day, his tone casual but full of purpose. Takru listened in surprise, as Bei explained he had business there anyway. Though confused at first, Takru slowly processed the offer. Realization dawned on him, and a smile broke through his blank expression. Laughter erupted as Takru let go of the tension. Joy filled the moment, lightening the air around them. While Takru teased Bei's impulsiveness, Bei simply shrugged. He valued his peaceful, flexible life, and saw no need to complicate it further. With arms lifted high, the craftsman excitedly reported to Bei that the requested task was complete. Bei examined the clothes given to him, unsure whether he should accept something so fine. Although they appeared expensive, he was assured they were made using leftover materials and expert skill alone. Just before departure, several children surrounded Bei, playfully demanding souvenirs from the town. Offering a small bow, Bei acknowledged their words and prepared for the journey. As he and his companion took off with their winged mount, the others waved and cheered them on. Not far off, a mysterious woman stood silently among falling leaves, her gaze fixed on the distant hills. Standing beneath the trees, the elven woman stared ahead in silence. Others noticed her stillness and teased her gently, hinting at feelings of loneliness. One companion spoke calmly, reflecting on Bei's change. They were relieved he had finally found a peer he could trust, someone to connect with on equal terms. Meanwhile, Bei arrived at the checkpoint with his cheerful companion. He introduced himself with confidence, while casually assigning the role of luggage carrier to the quiet boy beside him. A puzzled official raised an eyebrow at the situation, clearly surprised. He questioned the boy's willingness to assist without knowing the full story, leaving Bei's companion momentarily speechless. Bei's companion stood stunned after hearing how much shopping was involved. The official confirmed Bei's yearly habit of buying out nearly every store in town. As they entered Varial City, the atmosphere shifted. Bei led the way with enthusiasm, while his reluctant helper tried to voice concerns about the impossible task of carrying everything. With a calm smile, Bei explained there was no need to worry. Everything he bought would go straight into his personal barrier, eliminating any need to haul it by hand. He proudly revealed this convenient ability came from his reincarnation, before more questions could be asked. Bei grabbed his friend's hand and rushed ahead. Bei and Takeru stepped into the bustling marketplace, where shopkeepers welcomed them warmly. Afterward, they turned down a quieter path. Bei stopped near a tall building and pointed something out with a smile, sparking curiosity in Takeru's eyes. Inside, a merchant greeted Bei and handed over a parcel. With a short exchange, the ordered herbs were secured, and Bei promised to return again later. As they resumed walking, Bei asked Takeru to follow him to one final destination. They arrived at a familiar spot. Takeru looked around, eyes widening in realization. Recognition settled in as he turned to Bei, already sensing the significance of this place. Takeru followed Bei through the church gate, confused by the unexpected stop. Bei casually explained he planned to recruit the ship's crew from this very place. Two children sat near the entrance. Bei asked for the director, prompting a shy response. Moments later, the director greeted them warmly. Her expression lit up when she saw Bei, who had clearly visited before. She explained the orphanage's stable condition was thanks to Bei's generous support. Not only had he donated funds, but he'd also crafted useful tools to aid the facility. Takeru stood frozen in disbelief. The idea that someone his age could financially support an entire church left him overwhelmed. As lunch was served, Bei and Takeru were surprised by the aroma. One sip revealed a familiar taste that reminded them of miso soup. Bei clarified that it was actually called gozel soup. The children had prepared it themselves, rotating responsibility as part of their daily routine. Curious about the young chefs, Takeru wandered around the dining hall. He eventually found the two children responsible, quietly eating by the window. When complimented, the girl responded with defensive pride. Though her words were sharp, the blush on her face hinted at hidden appreciation. The director began to apologize for the child's tone, but Bei waved it off. He looked serious for the first time that day. Kneeling before the children, Bei offered them a role aboard his future ship as cooks, though departure wasn't imminent. He hoped they would consider the idea. One child questioned Bei's ability to lead. His uncertain appearance made them doubt whether he could truly command a ship. Despite the comment, Bei responded with determination. He admitted his inexperience, yet promised to show them sights far beyond anything they'd ever known. Hope lit up in their eyes. The promise of new experiences stirred a quiet longing they hadn't realized existed. Excited by the offer, both children jumped to their feet, with raised voices and eager smiles. Bei confirmed the children's decision with the director, who gladly approved. She trusted their judgment completely and gave her blessing. With new resolve, Bei declared their next destination, the royal capital. Takeru agreed, knowing their journey had just begun. Bei explained they needed to search further for capable allies. No one nearby could fend off pirates while also protecting the kids. When asked about his decision, Takeru didn't hesitate. He accepted the path ahead, ready to follow Bei's lead. A distant voice praised Takeru's newfound determination. That confident expression made it clear he had grown, thanks to Bei's influence. Under the moonlit sky, the orphanage rested in silence. Inside, the children slept peacefully without a care. Bei, still awake, looked up from his book as someone approached his room. The unexpected visit piqued his curiosity. Ali stepped through the door, wrapped in a towel. Her expression was calm as she asked for a moment to talk. She mentioned hearing about the upcoming trip to the royal capital with Takeru. Bei confirmed the plan with a nod. While explaining his intentions to search for strong allies, Bei extended an invitation. He asked if Ali would join them, hoping for her support on the journey ahead. Ali gently refused Bei's offer to join the journey. Her reason was clear: she remained an adventurer at heart. Though unsure of her future plans, she admitted she might leave while Bei was away. She wanted to express her thanks while she still could. A soft smile crossed her face. She recalled how much it meant when Bei called her black hair beautiful. His words had changed something inside her. For the first time, she could look ahead with pride. Bei respected her choice with a smile. Quietly, Ali reflected that he too had once been an adventurer, if only things were different. Bei gently told Ali she could return any time she felt lonely. His words caught her by surprise. He smiled and assured her that no matter what happened, he would always be there for her. Ali held back tears as she thanked him. Though younger, Bei's kindness left a lasting warmth in her heart. Bei and his companion walked calmly beneath the trees, discussing their journey to the royal capital. Instead of flying by dragon, they chose the sea route for practicality. With a map laid out, Bei explained their travel course in detail. Concern turned to shock when Bei revealed the reason. Control of the port had fallen into the hands of the mafia, making it too dangerous to approach. Realizing the depth of the issue, the companion expressed disbelief at the capital's current state. Suddenly, a dwarf appeared, panting from the run. He called out urgently, interrupting their quiet planning. The young dwarf nervously introduced himself, eyes wide with admiration. With enthusiasm, the boy begged to join the journey to the royal capital, offering to handle all the physical labor. Despite the sudden request, Bei gave a warm smile and accepted the proposal. The boy, introducing himself as Denko, lit up with joy and greeted Takeru with cheerful excitement from behind. The dwarf uncle shouted one last warning, reminding Denko not to cause any trouble during the trip. As the vehicle launched beneath the waves, Denko gazed around with awe. The underwater travel amazed him, his wide eyes reflecting the marvel of the journey ahead. The boat sliced through the waves at high speed, drawing awe from Denko. He shouted in excitement, amazed that Bei could even build boats. Bei encouraged Denko, pointing out that with earth magic and iron sand, dwarves like him could do the same. As the boat neared its destination, Denko eagerly promised to try crafting one back at the village. Just ahead, the royal capital finally came into view. The city of Slenviek rose beyond the water, its towering walls and majestic buildings leaving everyone speechless. Before doing anything else, Bei suggested cleaning the warehouse so they'd have a place to sleep. Denko confidently accepted the task of cleaning the warehouse. He promised to make it spotless by the time they returned. With the task delegated, Bei proposed heading to the port. Takeru reacted in surprise, remembering the earlier warning about the mafia's presence. Takeru hesitated, voicing concern about the mafia controlling the area. Bei acknowledged the risk but suggested a simple walk wouldn't cause trouble. To Takeru's surprise, the friend in question was Barvand, the president of a powerful trading company. As they approached the crowded waterfront, Takeru stared at the bustling port and wondered how Bei had formed such an unlikely connection with a man of Barvand's stature. While walking through the crowd, Bei was recognized by a smiling man who greeted him warmly. Apparently, Bei had repaired this man's ship in the past. Though surprised, Bei couldn't quite recall the encounter, asking plainly who he was. The man introduced himself as Lodger, a member of the Bazavador company. With the mention of their previous meeting, Beatty began to vaguely remember him. Asked whether Barvand was available, Lodger explained that the president was too busy to meet. After thinking it over, Lodger made a suggestion. Instead of regular sailors, he proposed hiring adventurer merchants. Takeru, slightly confused by the term, repeated it aloud. Lodger explained that adventurer merchants combined travel and trade, making them suitable candidates for ship crew. Without hesitation, Lodger offered to guide them to the usual gathering spot of these adventurers. They arrived near the docks, scanning the area. Something unusual caught Takeru's attention, as he pointed out a strange sight in the distance. Thick smoke filled the sky, a ship nearby had caught fire, and people were already fleeing the scene. Chaos spread as a woman shouted for help. Injured passengers were visible. Takeru and Bei stood frozen for a moment, alarmed by the sudden emergency unfolding before them. The injured man lay unconscious as his daughter cried out in despair. Bei and the others learned their ship had been attacked by pirates. Nearby citizens hesitated to help. A bystander explained that doctors only serve nobles, leaving commoners helpless in emergencies like this. Without a word, Bei stepped forward. His presence caught the girl's attention as he approached calmly and purposefully. He stood before her and offered to help, His voice was steady as he asked whether she wanted him to treat her father. Moved by his offer, she looked up with hope. Bei explained that he had some medicine, and could likely stabilize the man's condition. Bei assessed the injuries carefully. The man's right arm was beyond saving, and amputation was the only option. Hearing that, the daughter snapped. Grabbing Bei by the collar, she screamed that her father's dream to sail would be crushed. Tears streamed down her face as she protested. Her father, once a proud adventurer, would never forgive losing his ability to sail. Bei didn't flinch. He calmly told her that while her pain was valid, nothing mattered more than saving the man's life. Suddenly, the injured man stirred. Struggling to speak, he addressed Bei, apologizing for his daughter's behavior. The girl froze, overcome by relief and guilt. Blarney introduced himself as an adventurer merchant. Aware of the consequences, he gave Bei permission to amputate his damaged arm, choosing life over pride. While the girl looked after her father, Bei agreed to examine the rest of the injured crew, turning to Takeru. Bei handed him a blade. With a firm expression, he told him they'd work together to handle the situation. Meanwhile, smoke still rose from the burning ship at sea, a grim reminder of the pirates' attack. Later, Bei met Legier and thanked him for his help during the chaos. Legier reassured him there was no need to apologize, understanding it had been an unavoidable emergency. Before leaving, Bei asked Legier to send his regards to Barvand. With a smile, Legier agreed and took his leave. Inside, Takeru sat quietly, visibly shaken from everything that had happened. Bei approached and gently asked if he could walk. They began heading back. Bei noticed Takeru's silence and asked if the day's events had stunned him. Takeru admitted it had, acknowledging how dangerous sailing truly was. Lowering his gaze, Takeru sighed. The chaos and near tragedy had left a lasting impression walking along the pier. Bei teased him about getting cold feet. Takeru admitted he was afraid, but fear wasn't the only thing holding him back. Takeru looked out at the sky, thoughts heavy. He wanted to grow stronger, not for himself, but to protect the people sailing with him. Responsibility settled on his shoulders. He accepted it without hesitation, knowing full well the weight of being captain. Bei watched in silence. Takeru's quiet determination was clear in his stance, even if his words had stopped. A small smile spread on Bei's face. With a playful pat on the back, he encouraged Takeru to keep going as their journey continued. At sunrise, Denko leaned out the window and greeted Bei cheerfully. The streets were calm, and the village air felt refreshing. Bei, returning from an errand, responded with his usual bright smile. Inside, Bei praised Denko for cleaning up so thoroughly. Overwhelmed with happiness, Denko clenched his fists in silent joy. As hunger began to surface, Bei suggested they head to the Adventurer Guild for breakfast. Reaching the grand building, Denko hesitated. They weren't adventurers, after all. Bei reassured him it was fine. The guild cafeteria welcomed everyone. With excitement, Denko exclaimed his joy for the first time. He would eat at an adventurer guild, following their breakfast plan. Bei told Denko to get ready quickly. They set out together, but after walking through several streets, Denko pointed out that the path ahead was a dead end. Looking around, Bei questioned if he had taken a wrong turn. Takeru examined the area but couldn't find another road either. Ahead, the street was completely blocked by rubble and debris. Craters scarred the ground, and the marks of wind-based magic were visible. A group of townspeople warned them to stay away. A woman explained further her highness was the king's fourth child, and had become a hero at age 10. Local townsfolk gathered and shared mixed feelings about the hero princess. While some criticized her reckless magic, others defended her efforts. As the conversation shifted, praise for the princess's appearance spread among the crowd. One woman beamed with excitement, claiming they might even catch a glimpse of the hero princess. The hopeful tone left the group stunned. Their reactions caught somewhere between awkward silence and disbelief. After leaving the lively women behind, the three continued their walk. Takeru struggled to shake off the overwhelming conversation. While Takeru expressed skepticism about the fantastical events, Bei reminded him of their own reincarnation. Denko called out, urging Bei and Takeru to keep up. They moved through the busy street toward their destination. Inside the grand building, a vibrant spread of dishes greeted them. Both boys were amazed by the unexpected feast. Takeru hesitated, unsure where to begin. Bei explained. He had ordered at random and encouraged them to dig in. As soon as Takeru took a bite, he reacted strongly. Denko watched in surprise while Takeru struggled to swallow. Bei casually mentioned the cafeteria served meals from various races. Takeru complained, overwhelmed by the intense flavors. Takeru leaned over the table in exhaustion while Denko supported him. Bei quickly stepped away to fetch water, asking Denko to keep watch. A sudden commotion nearby caught Takeru's attention. He noticed the noise growing louder from another part of the cafeteria. An imposing group of adventurers entered. Denko's eyes lit up as he immediately recognized the famous A-rank team. Red Thunderclap. Takeru asked if they were well known. Denko excitedly explained that A-rank was the highest rank, and these were the strongest adventurers in the country. While observing the group, Takeru admitted they did carry a powerful presence. He learned the names of two members, the mage Balira and the warrior Dariella. The remaining members of Red Thunderclap were introduced: Zanberry, the leader, and Kaije, the skilled archer. Bei returned with water and noticed the cafeteria had become louder. Takeru stood up, pointing out the arrival of the renowned party. Recognizing Bei immediately, the adventurers called out to him with cheerful excitement. Takeru and Denko were left speechless by the unexpected familiarity. Bei greeted the party warmly, noting how well they seemed to be doing. He remained composed, despite the attention he received. Dariella rushed over and embraced Basie enthusiastically. The others reminded her not to cause a commotion inside the guild, but they all laughed, happy to see him again. Denko and Takeru stood amazed, wondering how Basie managed to befriend such renowned adventurers. Zanbari approached the boys with a friendly smile. After learning their names, he warmly recalled staying over at Bei's place multiple times in the past. The party asked to join their table. While Bei casually agreed, Kachidi hinted that Zanbari had something important to say. Balira quickly protested when Zanbari tried to delay. She insisted he speak up now, showing frustration over his habit of postponing important matters. Stepping back, Zanbari received a full scolding from Balira. She demanded he stop avoiding the issue and tell Bei what needed to be said immediately. Zanbari sat in silence, struggling to gather his words. Bei watched him calmly, waiting for a response. While the two sat apart, Balira and Kaije wondered if they had pushed Zanbari too hard. Both felt unsure about their approach. Takeru quietly asked if Beiti had done something wrong. Kache reassured him that everything would be fine, and that the topic wasn't bad. Finally, Zanbari began to speak. He admitted it was sudden, but there was something important he needed to share. With a serious expression, he leaned forward. In a low voice, he revealed his intention to marry someone, surprising Bei completely. Zanbari admitted he was already 45 and had been dating someone for 5 years. He felt it was time to settle down and start a family. With a warm tone, he described his fiancée as both beautiful and deeply understanding. Her constant support gave him confidence in his decision. Bei asked about the future of the Red Thunderclap. Kavache gently revealed that the group had decided together to disband after much discussion. Dariella added that they hadn't settled on retiring just yet. She was still considering freelance adventuring as a possible path forward. Curious, Takeru leaned forward and asked about the identity of the bride. Both he and Bei wondered if she was someone they knew from their own village. Zanbari finally revealed the name of his bride, Tu Binyanira. Bei stared in complete shock at the name, confused and stunned. Bei questioned if it was a joke. Takeru tried to understand the situation, asking if he knew her personally. Memories rushed back as Bei remembered Nyanira. To everyone's surprise, she was his mother, smiling warmly in the past. The team admitted the relationship had always been wholesome. Bei, still in disbelief, couldn't understand how he'd missed it over the last 5 years. Zanbari clarified his purpose for coming to the capital. He only wanted to greet old friends before retiring and returning to the village, not as a hero but simply as himself. Zanbari sincerely asked Bei for permission to marry Nyanira. He promised to protect her and the rest of Bei's family from now on. Bei, moved by his resolve, accepted. He smiled and said he'd be waiting in the village, unable to refuse such genuine commitment. Though calling him Pops felt too awkward, Bei agreed they could grow into a family slowly. Zanbari accepted with a hearty laugh. With the serious discussion over, Dariella rallied everyone to celebrate the engagement. Her enthusiasm shifted the atmosphere instantly. The group cheered around the table as Zanbari treated them. Kache reminded the younger ones to skip the alcohol, and laughter filled the room. Zanbari, completely relaxed, collapsed into sleep after their talk. Watching him, Kahachi noted how relieved he seemed. When asked about his next steps, Kahachi admitted he hadn't given it much thought. Freelance adventuring didn't feel like the right fit. Balira, speaking calmly, suggested it might be time to settle down. With over 100 years behind him, even she felt it was overdue. Rather than objecting, Kaje sat in silence. Balira leaned in and hinted he should hear her out if he had no plans, breaking the tension. Bei introduced a new idea. Takru, he explained, was looking to build a crew and Kaji might just be the person he needed. Beiki confidently recommended Takru as a capable leader. Kaji and Takru were both caught off guard by the sudden proposal. Before hesitation could build, Kaji stood up and accepted. With determination, he requested to join Takru's crew immediately. Not only did Kaji accept without pause, but he also addressed Takru as captain, with surprising enthusiasm. Although Takru tried to offer time to reconsider, Kaji insisted he trusted his instincts. Bei quietly questioned if Kaji was possibly drunk. Rather than deny it, Bei clarified Kaji's behavior. Despite his looks, he was simply someone obsessed with adventuring, through and through. Kaji pulled Takru in close, assuring him there was no need to fear moving forward. His full support was promised with confidence. Smiling brightly, he suggested they embrace the unknown together. Takru could only stare in awe at his enthusiasm. Laughter filled the room as others watched the scene unfold. Balira joked that Takru had been completely swept off his feet. While the moonlit night settled in, Balira reminded Bei to take responsibility for this new team. He acknowledged it with a quiet nod. Before departure, Bei asked one last time if Kahachi was certain. Without hesitation, Kahachi answered he wanted to understand his new captain better. While Takru felt uncertain, Kahachi eagerly expressed his desire to hear more about the captain's past. Despite his doubts, Takru agreed to share what he could. On the way back, Bei noticed something strange. A group was gathered in front of their warehouse, prompting his concern. As they approached, the figures introduced themselves as patrol guards. Suspicion immediately followed as they demanded explanations from the group. Basie was accused of placing magic on the warehouse that immobilized anyone who touched it. He denied involvement, visibly annoyed by the claim. Before tensions escalated, Kakashi stepped forward. With calm composure he prepared to intervene and resolve the situation directly. After dispelling the binding magic, the elf calmly observed the baffled patrol guards as they regained movement. Offended by her words, one of the guards lashed out. Without hesitation, she intercepted the strike, deflecting it effortlessly with composed precision. Gripping her weapon, she coldly reminded them their visit had concluded. Her firm tone made it clear they were no longer welcome. The trio watched the guards retreat. Though one member questioned her actions, the captain quietly offered his thanks, recognizing her intent. Back inside, the truth surfaced: the guards were imposters from the mafia. Their visit had only been a thinly veiled warning. They discussed the attention drawn by their rented warehouse, wondering why they were being watched. Confidence flared as one of them boldly claimed they could fend off any threats that came, despite the bravado. The others requested a gentler approach next time. Laughter followed, easing the tension. With their initial goal of gathering skilled companions accomplished, Bei and his group took a brief pause. Takru opted to explore the royal capital with Kache. Meanwhile, Bei planned to visit the market for souvenirs. Before parting, Bei realized Takru lacked travel funds. He casually reached out, requesting Takru's hand, then placed a hefty pouch into it. Kachi looked on, stunned while Takru struggled to hold the pouch. Suspicion rose as the elf questioned just how much money had been crammed inside that bag. Bei answered with a nonchalant smile, about 500 gold coins. That amount could likely purchase nearly everything available in the city. Takuru froze, overwhelmed by the thought of carrying such a massive amount of money. Insisting it was part of a practical lesson, Bei encouraged Takuru to use the gold wisely. Before leaving, he handed over the pouch with a grin and called it a surprise mission for the captain. Outside, Takuru sighed as the weight of responsibility settled in. Keikache noticed his hesitation and reassured him with gentle words, urging him to walk with pride and confidence. The peaceful mood quickly shifted when a hostile crowd gathered. Assessing the situation, Bei leaned against the wall with a tired expression. Though confident in their strength, he found the confrontation bothersome. Kostach calmly proposed they shake off their pursuers. Bei agreed without hesitation, prompting Denko to react in a panic as the group sprang into action. Without delay, Bei launched into the air, effortlessly carrying the younger member with him. Kahache dashed forward with Denko in her arms, streaking past stunned onlookers. Their movement was so fast it left barely a trace behind, catching the enemies completely off guard. As the chase intensified, Kache couldn't help but enjoy the excitement. Even as they ran, her thoughts drifted to the future. The thrill of the unknown stirred her spirit, and the idea of more unpredictable adventures filled her with anticipation. Bei stopped after reaching a quiet alley and decided it was a suitable place to observe. Holding Denko's hand, he led him toward the street where people quietly passed by. Denko excitedly pointed at a girl nearby, thrilled to see another dwarf like himself. He urged Denko to look again, hinting there was more beneath the surface. While Denko seemed confused at first, Bei's serious tone carried a deeper meaning. From their hidden view, they saw people resting with blank expressions. These weren't residents. They were survivors displaced by tragedies. Without proper shelter or food, the group barely sustained themselves with scraps from vendor stalls. Denko, filled with urgency, asked if there was a way to help the struggling dwarves. Bei listened quietly, waiting for the boy to express himself clearly. Kneeling to Denko's level, Bei reminded him that vague intentions wouldn't move others. Despite wanting to help, Denko admitted he had no concrete idea yet. Frustration grew as he struggled to offer a solution. Bei considered the situation carefully. Taking responsibility for everyone wasn't realistic, and empty gestures wouldn't solve anything. A practical answer was needed. A sudden thought brought clarity. Rather than charity, offering work could lead to dignity. Bei suggested they give the refugees jobs, planting the seed of a sustainable plan. Bei shared a proverb, explaining that work brings value and dignity. Denko, encouraged, believed this was the right path to help. Without hesitation, Denko stepped forward and called out to the nearby group, determined to share their plan. He announced that Bei could offer them jobs, assuring everyone they wouldn't need to worry about food anymore. Suddenly, the crowd rushed toward Bei with loud excitement. The unexpected response left both him and Denko momentarily stunned. Bei found himself surrounded, trying to calm the enthusiastic group. Their cheers echoed as he stood there, overwhelmed by their joy. A child stepped forward and suggested relocating to a nearby church. Bei agreed, seeing the location as a better place to organize support. Soon after, the group moved to the church grounds. A line formed as food was prepared, bringing order and calm to the once scattered crowd. Bei politely apologized to the sisters for the sudden arrival. They welcomed the situation kindly, believing it aligned with divine guidance. Grateful voices expressed thanks for the food and clothing they received. One of the young men also thanked Bei for guiding them to this safe place. Introductions followed. Karai, Barney, Rim, and Dayam shared their names and backgrounds. Bei handed Karai a paper filled with items to purchase and asked her to handle it. She reviewed the long list with surprise, noting the many ingredients. The supplies were meant for both village souvenirs and a dinner. While it wasn't a major task, Bei mentioned he would give her more important jobs later. Karai hesitated, unsure if they could manage everything. Nervousness showed in her expression as she tried to stay composed. Curious, Bei commented on her refined speech and calm behavior. Carrie admitted she had once attended school. Her appearance and ability to read hinted at a more educated past than expected. Bei acknowledged Barney's fairness in distributing scraps, showing she already displayed a sense of responsibility. Dayam's ability to calm others and Rim's strong communication skills were also noted. Sitting with a gentle smile, Bei reassured them he had chosen them for a reason. He urged them to believe in themselves and support each other as a team. Encouraged, the group responded with confidence. Their spirits lifted as they promised to work together and not let him down. With instructions given, Bei sent Denko to help with the errands. The five of them moved as a group, ready to take on their shared task with determination. While walking, Rim glanced at Denko's older brother. She quietly commented on how kind he seemed. With a bright expression, Denko proudly called Bei the coolest and kindest person in the world. Later, the group returned to the church. A sister regretfully explained that they couldn't stay overnight due to space limitations. Bei responded calmly, offering to find other arrangements. Before parting, he mentioned they would return in the morning to discuss plans for rebuilding the church. The sister nodded in agreement. Under the night sky, Bei led them to a nearby building. He opened the door and told them this would be their home for the night. A fairy cried out as she spotted someone approaching. Excitement spread quickly among the other pixies when they recognized the familiar figure. The pixies swarmed Takeru, surrounding him with cheer and curiosity. Keiichi quickly stepped in, scolding them for overwhelming her captain. Confused by the scene, Bei asked Kahachi for an explanation. Kahachi revealed they had purchased the pixies. Her serious tone made it clear this was not just an impulsive act. She admitted they found the pixies being sold at the black market, despite knowing the cost. Takeru used the money Bei gave him to rescue all 30 of them. When asked about the pixies, Takeru answered confidently. He planned to let them work aboard his ship. He admitted using Beigi's money and expressed hope that it was still acceptable. Despite the hesitation, his decision had been well considered. Bei didn't scold him. Instead, he acknowledged the choice as Takeru's own and chose to trust his judgment. The pixies burst into celebration, excited by the news. They cheered about working and traveling on a ship together. Meanwhile, Denko watched in awe. Seeing the pixies for the first time left him amazed. One of them approached Bae and thanked him, impressed by his kindness. Pixies explored their surroundings joyfully. One sat atop Bae's head, while he sighed, realizing peace might now be difficult. The children prepared to return to the church after fulfilling their morning promise. With cheerful expressions, they excused themselves, eager for breakfast with the sister and other kids. While the others walked away, Bae stayed to discuss reconstruction plans with the sister. Without delay, Bae volunteered to begin the search. The wooden door creaked behind him as he stepped outside. Moments later, a pixie fluttered by, confirming their awareness of the captain's absence. He found Takru seated quietly on a bench, tools in hand and a pixie beside him. The moment felt calm. The pixies explained they'd been training Takru. Confidently, they assured Bae of their healing abilities and support. Takru shared his idea of making maps using the pixies' aerial perspective. Bae found the approach surprisingly practical, praising his resourcefulness without hesitation. The pixies returned from their mission, excited to report their success. They had memorized the layout of the royal capital. With enthusiasm, the pixies hovered over the page, pointing out landmarks. Bae observed quietly, noting how Takru had grown into his role. Suddenly, a light-hearted argument broke out between the pixies over the identity of a nearby shop. Takru struggled to mediate, unsure who was right. Bae sighed, half amused. Though capable, their future might not be so simple. One of the pixies crashed headfirst into Takru, shouting a warning before he could react. Still rubbing his head, Takru groaned while the pixies gathered silently. Bae approached calmly and asked what had caused such panic, noticing their nervous expressions. The frantic pixie revealed the truth. A crowd had surrounded the church, their voices angry and rising. Bae decided they should head to the church immediately. His concern centered on the children's safety. Shouts echoed through the streets. People demanded food and shouted in desperation. The situation at the church had become a full-blown crisis, and tensions continued to rise. Tensions escalated quickly in front of the church. The staff pleaded with the crowd to remain calm. Bae rushed forward, taking command of the situation. He ordered everyone inside immediately, shielding the children and pushing them to safety. Just as confusion peaked, a magical wall suddenly erupted, blocking the entrance. The crowd stumbled back, startled by the unexpected barrier. Once inside, the atmosphere eased slightly. Though shaken, the staff expressed gratitude to Bae for stepping in. Holding a sheet of paper, an elf calmly stepped forward. With a serious expression, he pointed to the page and claimed that everything likely started because of what it contained. The elf revealed a paper that had been circulated, promising free food at the church. Bae listened, surprised that someone had used his past kindness to bait a crowd. Suspicion pointed toward the mafia. They were likely behind the false notice, exploiting people's desperation for a cruel purpose. Bae considered the situation. Though it seemed petty at first, the scale of disruption proved otherwise. He began weighing his next steps carefully. The elf's tone shifted. He proposed eliminating those responsible, revealing a disturbing smile. Confident in his memory, the elf declared he could target each culprit. His arrows, he claimed, would not miss even if they hid among the crowd. Takru panicked as Kaji's fury escalated. Bae remained calm, acknowledging that the elf had reached his limit. A mysterious woman appeared, laughing from above. Her mocking tone challenged Kaji's image as a wise elf. Bae demanded to know who she was. She descended smoothly, revealing that she had bypassed the barrier, encircling the church. Kaji received unexpected advice. The woman warned that violence wouldn't solve the crowd's unrest. Their anger, she explained, stemmed from hunger, not manipulation. With a calm smile, the woman concluded that the solution was simple: feed the people. Takru lunged forward, restraining Kaji before he could escalate things further. The mysterious woman observed quietly, unimpressed by the outburst. Kaji panicked, with regret. Bae remained puzzled by the woman's identity, while she cheerfully praised the return of calm. The woman introduced herself as Thani, an immortal figure known to many as the Everlasting Witch. Her presence now carried weight and mystery. She explained her visit wasn't hostile. Instead, she extended an invitation to Bae, an offer to join her for a tea party. Bae, clearly occupied, tried to decline. Thani pointed, casually, to Takru, suggesting he handle things in Bae's place. Takru reacted with disbelief. Bae tried to object, reminding Thani he hadn't agreed to anything. Her confident tone, however, praised his abilities and encouraged him to believe in himself. She then revealed the tea party was hosted by her friend, an influential figure known in the region. According to her, attending would be to Bei's benefit. Despite her assurances, Bei remained hesitant. Thani leaned in with a sharp look, challenging him with a quiet intensity. Curiosity surfaced as Bei questioned the host's ties to the mafia. Thani's vague response only deepened his doubts, making him suspicious yet intrigued. Finally, unable to resist the mystery or her pressure, Bei gave in. He reluctantly agreed to attend, though his tone remained cautious. Bei entrusted the church to Takru, asking Kaje and Denko to assist him. Takru protested, surprised by the sudden responsibility placed on him. Before leaving, Bei warned that the protective barrier would disappear. The people outside, likely still hostile, might try to break in once it did. The weight of the task overwhelmed Takru. Kache noticed his tension and cautiously asked if he was holding up, determined to rise to the moment. Takru slapped his cheeks and focused. He called out to the sisters, asking them to prepare food using all available supplies. It was time to calm the crowd with what they truly needed: something to eat. Takuru took charge, calling on Kache and Denko to follow him. With urgency in his voice, he stepped into action. Meanwhile, Bei walked alongside Thani, who commented on the chaotic but entertaining nature of his friends. He asked where the party would be held. She led him to a quaint, ivy-covered building. With a gesture, she welcomed him to Café Granny Gurin's pleasant moment. Bei was surprised to learn it was a café, Thani explained. She also lived there and worked as a waitress when needed. Inside, he admired the exotic decor. Someone recognized him, confirming his identity as the rumored Bei. Thani responded with a simple yes. Thani introduced Bei to her friend, Dazel. The elderly man invited Bei to relax and simply call him sire. As Bei observed, Dazel mentioned that his tea was currently being poured seemingly by magic, without visible hands. Thani explained that Granny Gurin, the mysterious owner, rarely appeared and hadn't spoken in 100 years. Bei was told Gurin was now preparing his tea. According to Thani, her behavior and tea were both unusual, fitting her reputation. As his tea was served, Bei froze. The teapot in front of him was identical to the one he had cherished in his previous world, a detail too specific to dismiss. Thani explained that Gurin's tea could draw out powerful memories. The teapot itself was magical and never ran dry. Dazel noted that being served tea was a rare honor. Bei, convinced, accepted the offer and prepared to drink. To express his gratitude, Bei offered a gift: homemade tea cakes created by his younger sister, a token of appreciation for Gurin. Everyone stared in surprise at the floating treats. Thani was thrilled, immediately recognizing them as tea cakes and reacting with delight. Chaos followed as the cakes vanished one by one. Thani demanded more, while Dazel scolded Gurin for hoarding them. After the light-hearted tea session, Dazel asked Beatty to meet him in the next room. The mood turned more serious as he prepared to discuss the real issue. Bei entered the room and apologized for the earlier chaos. Dazel dismissed it, instead focusing on the matter at hand. Several unfamiliar men stood behind Dazel when asked. Bei admitted he had never seen them before. Realizing this, Dazel concluded the troublemakers were acting independently, without orders. That only made the situation more dangerous. Turning to the suited men, Dazel issued a stern warning. He made it clear that no one was to touch Bei again, or there would be consequences. The suited men bowed respectfully. They acknowledged Dazel's warning and agreed without protest before taking their leave. As they exited, Dazel casually explained that those men represented all 4 major mafia families. His message had reached every boss in one move. With a confident smile, Dazel assured Bei that he no longer needed to worry about mafia trouble. Bei was stunned by the influence Dazel quietly wielded. Bei expressed his admiration, but Dazel downplayed the gesture. To him, it wasn't anything grand, just necessary action. The elder leaned back and lit his pipe. He told Bei that young people should focus on their own path, leaving heavier burdens to adults like him. Bei responded with gratitude, promising to keep Dazel's words in mind. A genuine smile showed his appreciation. Their conversation continued in good spirits. Dazel praised Bei's honesty, and Bei humbly accepted the compliment, finding it an unexpected honor. Upon returning to the church, Beatty was warmly welcomed. Takru looked worn out, drawing immediate concern from everyone. Fatigue had clearly caught up with Takru. Despite that, Kaj recounted how bravely he had acted, deeply impressing everyone who witnessed it. Later, townspeople, who had come earlier, offered to help with renovating the church. Their willingness brought a welcome sense of relief and support. Bei reflected on the tea party to him. It revealed a world built on quiet influence and responsibility. Bei gathered the group and calmly announced the beginning of the church's reconstruction. Denko was assigned first. His job was to prepare meals for the children and sisters, with the added note to use earth magic for creating extra tableware if needed. Next, the pixies received their duties. They would handle all communication during the project. Kaiji was named the troubleshooter. Her role would involve stepping in whenever problems arose, even if force was required. Finally, Bei turned to Takeru. Unexpectedly, he was assigned the role of site foreman. Taken aback, he stared silently, while Bei handed over the floor plan with a confident grin. Takeru questioned the decision. Surprised by the sudden assignment, he wondered aloud if Bei was simply avoiding responsibility. Bei stayed calm, pushing Takeru's hand aside with a grin. Despite the resistance, he reaffirmed that every role was assigned with purpose. To justify himself, Bei revealed his plan to meet someone important, a person who would help the church long-term. Takeru sighed, still doubtful. He asked why Bei couldn't handle it himself, recalling advice from an experienced adult. Keiichi leaned forward and asked if he had someone specific in mind. Without hesitation, Bei said he intended to recruit Blarney, an adventurer merchant. Denko recalled the man Bei met at the port, an adventurer merchant named Blarney. He wondered aloud how Blarney was doing now, and if he'd accept the offer. Keiichi shared her doubts. She considered the possibility that Blarney may have already retired due to injury. Bei admitted he wouldn't know Blarney's answer until he asked. The real issue, though, was more basic. He didn't even know where Blarney lived. Unexpectedly, one of the girls in the group raised her hand. She claimed to know Blarney's address. Takeru flinched in surprise as she revealed the location. With a sly smile, she teased his reaction, enjoying the moment. The mysterious woman brushed off questions with a sly smile, claiming it was just a casual visit. She shared new information. Blarney's daughter, Navari, had recently been seen near the market at the port. When asked for her source, she responded with a smug expression. Gossip, she claimed, held more power than most people gave it credit for. Though skeptical, Keiichi admitted the point. She acknowledged that gossip wasn't always unreliable. Sometimes it led to real answers. With playful banter, the two women exchanged smirks. One teased the elf for being too rigid, while the other calmly asserted she'd merely stated a fact. The group settled on a plan. Bei suggested they follow the lead for now and see where it went, while tensions eased slightly between the members. As they left together, Bei reminded the others not to tease too much. Meanwhile, the market's fresh fruits became a tempting side distraction during their search. Arriving at the busy market near the port, Bei scanned the area. He had no clear idea where to begin the search for Navari. While browsing a fruit stand, his hand accidentally brushed someone else's. Turning around, Bei came face to face with a girl. She looked up and apologized softly, unaware of the timing. Bei recognized the girl immediately and called out to her. Amazed by the coincidence, he couldn't believe how quickly he'd found Navari without wasting time. He explained his purpose. He needed her help to reach her father. She listened attentively, curious about the sudden request. Hearing about her father's condition after surgery, Bei insisted on checking in personally. Navari hesitated, revealing her father's slow recovery. She admitted that Blarney had changed after the incident. His energy and strength hadn't fully returned. Bei nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Later, Bei sat by the bedside. Observing Blarney's health, he handed over medicine to ease lingering pain. Blarney expressed his gratitude to Bei, who had taken the time to check on his health. The room was calm, though the air held a hint of change, admitting he no longer needed his shop. Blarney confirmed he was retiring. The once busy space now stood as a reminder of his past work. He reflected on his misfortune injuries, a lost ship, and fading trust had ended his merchant days. Bei offered him a job without delay. The timing felt perfect, catching Blarney by surprise, but also lighting a spark of curiosity. Despite knowing nothing about the details, Blarney agreed without hesitation. His cheerful acceptance left Navari stunned, while Bei smiled at the unexpected ease. Navari hesitated but couldn't argue. Blarney reminded her they owed Bei too much to decline. Bei admitted there was more to it. He hinted at a larger plan related to the church, one he hadn't yet explained fully. Growing impatient, Navari urged him to speak clearly. Bei finally revealed the true scope. He wanted Blarney to manage an entire island. The island, located near the royal capital, was uninhabited. Bei explained that it was close enough for regular visits, making it a viable assignment. He then tied it back to the church. The current reconstruction was being done by orphans and people from slums once finished. They'd lose their jobs. Bay explained the plan developed the island into something self-sufficient. The choice of what to build was theirs. Blarney quickly understood the opportunity presented. Navari struggled to keep up with the scale of the plan. Bay reassured them that he'd handle the funding and logistics. To give it identity, Bay named the island Abrict, meaning harmony in the southern continent's language. Blarney considered the name seriously. Eagerly, Navari suggested transforming the place into a trade town. The first step would be to build a functioning port to support their plans. Blarney became animated. Though the future wasn't guaranteed, he saw potential. He asked Bay to connect them with possible trading partners, showing renewed enthusiasm. Bay paused to think about potential trade partners. Jokingly, he teased Blarney's energy, despite his age. In an unexpected suggestion, Bay mentioned his mermaid friends. The idea of trading with mermaids sparked instant curiosity and excitement. Later, under the night sky, Takru continued managing the reconstruction efforts. He checked on the progress while others busily worked around the church. Bay rejoined the group. Takru reported that everyone was making solid progress and the work would wrap up in a few days. Concerned for Blarney's condition, Takru asked if he was okay. With a smile, Blarney assured him he was fine and ready to inspect the church himself. Takru asked if the meeting ended smoothly. Bay smirked, saying Blarney was so fired up he'd swim to the island, if allowed. A young girl entered, announcing dinner was ready. She paused upon noticing the unfamiliar guests. Bay introduced Blarney to the children, starting with Kere. He explained that Blarney would be looking after them going forward. Though nervous, Kere politely greeted him. Blarney reassured her with a gentle smile, telling her they were more than just co-workers. With a kind gesture, he placed his hand on her head and declared they were now family. Kere looked up, eyes wide, touched by his words. As Blarney gently patted Kere's head, another child stepped forward, quietly watching the exchange with curious eyes. Holding a warm bowl, the young girl bravely asked if he would join them for dinner. Blarney, momentarily surprised, gave a small nod. He accepted the invitation with a smile as the group gathered inside. Bay and Takru watched with satisfaction. Navari, slightly hesitant, followed them in. Outside, Navari paused. She looked at Bay and acknowledged how kind-hearted he truly was. Bay simply smiled in return. With a soft voice, Navari admitted it had been a long time since she saw her father so genuinely alive. That simple smile meant everything. Navari smiled warmly, her eyes glistening as she expressed heartfelt thanks. The atmosphere softened around her. Children rushed toward her with joy, calling her name and hugging tightly. Bay quietly accepted her gratitude with a calm smile. Laughter spread as the kids invited her to dinner. Navari, surprised but touched, noticed her own face had relaxed, more than expected. Takru turned to Bay, suggesting they join the others. Bay agreed without hesitation, following the sound of cheerful voices into the dining hall. Children played joyfully in the newly reconstructed yard, their voices echoing under the calm afternoon sky. Bay arrived casually, waving at the group. The children greeted him with cheerful energy, happy to see him again. One of the children asked if Mr. Pops and Navari would be joining them. Bay gently explained they had gone to Abrict Island today, leaving the kids visibly let down. He scratched his head, apologizing and promising to bring them next time. The children tried to hide their disappointment, but their silence said enough. Before the mood sank further, Navari appeared at the gate. Shocked and overjoyed, the kids ran to her. Navari approached Bay with a serious expression and requested a favor, something she had deeply considered. She asked him to build a fully functional magic ship. Bay, caught off guard, froze in surprise, curious about her request. Bay wanted to understand more. She explained her desire to carry on her uncle's legacy. Navari revealed that Denko had suggested Bay was the best candidate for the task. Since the original ship had been destroyed in a fire, she had been seeking a skilled craftsman. Bay smiled at the mention of Denko, and agreed without hesitation. Navari's eyes lit up with joy. Eager to contribute, Navari promised to help, while Beatty demonstrated his ability to craft a ship model, instantly using only sand. She watched in awe as Bay effortlessly shaped the model, but he reminded her it would still need a power source. Realizing that magic ships relied on mana, Navari quickly deduced they would need a magic stone to make it function. With growing enthusiasm, she asked if there were any shops nearby that sold such stones. Bay hesitated, knowing they weren't common. Eventually, they found one, but the cost was steep, 3 gold coins for a ring-sized stone. Even so, they considered it. Bay reassured Navari not to worry about money, but reminded her they'd need a much larger power source. Navari pointed out that in the royal capital, magic stones were small and often used as accessories. Finding one large enough seemed unlikely. With no better options, they agreed to search every shop in the capital, determined to find what they needed. They visited different places, meeting shopkeepers and browsing inventory, but nothing met the requirements. The search dragged on. After exhausting the local shops, Bei sighed. A large magic stone was nowhere to be found. He realized another solution would be necessary. With no suitable stones in the shops, Bei decided on a bold alternative: hunting monsters for magic stones. Despite knowing it wasn't necessary, he committed to the idea and marched off without hesitation. Before he could act, a mysterious woman appeared, teasing him for being too busy to rest. Bei asked if she had more information, but instead, she claimed she was only offering advice. With a mischievous smile, she pointed to the ground and warned him not to take another step forward. Bei stood in silence as the mysterious woman reassured him with confidence. She promised he would find exactly what he was searching for. Left alone in the corridor, Bei stared blankly ahead. Her cryptic advice left him confused. A voice suddenly called out his name. Bei turned to see a cheerful man approaching him with urgency. The man explained he had been searching all over, clearly relieved to have found him. After a moment of squinting, Bei recognized him. He called out the man's name, Lagier, with enthusiasm. With little hesitation, Lagier got straight to the point. He had heard that Beatty was searching for a powerful magic stone to operate a ship. Lagier confidently offered his company's help, promising a strong selection of high-quality magic stones in stock. As they wrapped up their conversation, a girl approached Bei with curiosity. He introduced Lagier as someone offering to sell them a magic stone. Lagier remained polite and calm, despite the girl's surprise. Hearing the name, Bazivador, sparked an unexpected reaction from the girl. She assumed Bei had close ties to the renowned figure behind the company, and reacted with clear shock. With a light-hearted tone, Beiki confirmed that the so-called Mr. Boss was a rather unique individual. While walking, Bei admitted he hadn't realized Bazivador was such a well-known name. The girl explained that Bazivador was a legendary merchant known across the entire country. Bei listened with mild surprise, realizing the man's influence was far greater than he imagined. Suddenly, a massive crash interrupted their walk. Barrels and crates flew through the air as something exploded violently nearby, catching everyone off guard. Instinctively, Bei and the girl ducked for cover. Debris scattered around them, and panic broke out as they noticed Lagier was caught in the blast. Bei clenched his fists, immediately stepping forward. Without hesitation, he shielded the girl. While keeping his guard up, Bei scanned the sky and spotted the cause. A strange whirlwind spun in the distance. Amid the fading whirlwind, Bei spotted a girl standing at its center. Her presence was strangely familiar. Standing tall, she calmly surveyed the damage. This was the one chosen by the gods at age 10. With a bright smile, the hero princess announced that the enemies had been defeated. Her cheerful tone contrasted with the destruction around her, but the message was clear: everyone was safe now. The crowd erupted with gratitude. Citizens and travelers alike thanked the hero princess, their voices filled with admiration. Suddenly reminded of the chaos, the girl next to Bei asked about Lagier. Neither had seen him since the explosion. A calm woman appeared beside Lagier, assuring everyone he was fine. Though unconscious, he hadn't suffered serious injuries. Introducing herself as Marie, she explained her role as the personal bodyguard of the hero princess. Bei and his companion stood in silence, reflecting on the chaos, with Lagier out of commission. Just as they started wondering what to do next, a familiar voice called out. An older man approached with confidence, revealing himself as someone they both knew, referred to as Pops. With a knowing smile, Pops explained that he had come prepared, understanding their goal. He offered the exact item they needed: a magic stone for building a ship. Pops reached into his coat and handed over a glowing sword. The weapon radiated energy strong enough to power an entire ship, astonishing Bei and his friend. Surprised, the young girl realized the sword was a keepsake from her mother. Smiling gently, Pops expressed his confidence that their mother would be happier seeing the sword put to use. With resolve in her eyes, she gripped the sword tightly and handed it to Bei. Her words were clear: he should now use it to work his magic. Bei paused and looked at her one more time, concerned about using such a precious memento. With determination, the girl made a single request in return: that Bei build the best ship possible, using the magic sword. Bei responded without hesitation. Smiling wide, he accepted the challenge. The sword floated above his hand, charged with magical energy, ready for transformation. A swirling surge of magic wrapped around the blade. Sparkling light filled the air as the sword responded, releasing power visible to all watching waves. of energy surged across the ship's structure as Bae worked. Watching the result unfold, he gave a satisfied nod, confident that the magic had been fully harnessed. Standing beside him, Pops praised the outcome. Bae humbly downplayed the achievement. Bae proudly presented the completed ship, eager to hear Navari's opinion. Her face lit up with joy as she praised the design. Overwhelmed with excitement, she immediately asked to explore the interior, receiving unexpected permission to customize the ship. Navari was momentarily stunned. Bae assured her the vessel now belonged to her. Encouraged, she nodded while Pops watched supportively in the background. Before she could respond further, Pops offered a confident thumbs up. He reminded Navari that she wasn't alone. Her father would always be cheering her on. Bae woke from a peaceful sleep, the sunlight filtering through the windows of the cabin as he made his way through the house. He was met with a warm greeting, nodding in return. Bae rubbed his shoulder, loosening up before heading out for the day. Outside, an elf lounging nearby noticed Bae's early start. Bae mentioned he'd be visiting Bazivador and would return by night. While walking off, Bae heard cheerful voices calling after him. A few fairies and a girl waved energetically, wishing him a safe trip with bright smiles. Without hesitation, Bae leapt from the rooftop, light on his feet. While Bae departed, Keiichi turned toward the kitchen, ready to start the morning routine. Meanwhile, Bae reached the edge of the village, slowing his pace. Surrounded by tall buildings, he suddenly realized something important he had overlooked. Before setting out staring into the open sky, he began to doubt his destination. There was no guarantee Bazivador would be at home, or even on land. Thoughts swirled in his head as he considered turning back. Bringing one of the pixies might have helped him track Bazivador down. Just as he hesitated, a girl jumped in front of him with sudden enthusiasm. The energetic girl introduced herself with pride, calling herself the Hero Princess. Eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, she boldly declared her mission to help anyone in need. Bae listened to her introduction, and despite his doubts, decided to accept her offer. Curious, Bae asked if she knew someone named Barvin Bazivador. He admitted he didn't know where to find him but hoped she might have some clue. She paused, thinking deeply. After a moment of focus, a spark lit her face. She remembered something. With certainty, she revealed she knew the location of Bazivador's shop. Bae nodded in relief and trusted her guidance. After receiving a gentle head pat from Bae, the Hero Princess beamed with joy. Her innocent excitement made it easy to forget she was still just a child. Despite her bold claims, a quiet figure appeared nearby, holding up a sign. Bae recognized her as Marie, the young princess's watchful bodyguard. Her silent presence was both calm and stern. Marie politely raised a warning, reminding Bae not to touch the princess so casually in the future. Though young, she was still of royal blood and deserved proper respect. Another card followed. This one more direct. She calmly mentioned that failing to observe protocol could lead to harsh consequences, even beheading. Bae reacted with understandable alarm. Just as tension rose, Marie softened. With a final note, she allowed the incident to slide this time. While the Hero Princess looked around curiously, Bae reflected on Marie's intense devotion. Brushing the awkwardness aside, the girl quickly regained her enthusiasm and urged Bae to follow. Their pace quickened as they jumped from building to building. After a short run, the princess spotted their destination and pointed ahead with excitement. Upon arrival, they observed a large crowd gathered in front of the store. Bae thanked her for the help and, in return, handed over a small bag as a token of appreciation. Her eyes sparkled at the sight of the gift. Delighted, she eagerly asked if the treats were sweet, and Bae confirmed with a simple nod and smile. Bae reminded the Hero Princess to share the snacks with others, noting how much was inside. Facing a long line outside the shop, Bae hesitated. He calculated how long it might take and decided it was better to find another way inside. Quietly, he approached the back entrance. As he knocked, a loud yelp came from inside, catching him off guard. To his surprise, a flustered woman greeted him. She apologized for the unexpected situation, and Bae quickly reassured her, saying it was no big deal. Inside, Lagier appeared and welcomed Bae with a smile. Though kindly received, he was reminded to use the front door next time, especially for official business. Inside the building, a few people began whispering upon recognizing Bae. One of them approached him and expressed thanks for repairing her father's ship, confirming his identity as the well-known Bae-kun. She introduced herself politely as Zanino, the daughter of Barvin Bazivador. With a gentle smile, she acknowledged her earlier formality and apologized for not introducing herself sooner. Without hesitation, Zanino requested permission from Lagier to escort Bae personally. With a respectful nod, the attendant agreed. Recognizing her authority as the daughter of the company head, inside her home, Zanino offered Bea a seat and tea. She explained that her father had been out since morning but was likely returning soon, giving Bea a reason to wait. Beatty took in the elegant surroundings, well-dressed servants, polished floors, and expensive furniture. Zanino greeted her father with a warm welcome back, while Bea sipped tea in silence. Bazivador entered the room with a booming voice, excited to see Bea. He expressed surprise at the unannounced visit, radiating pride and energy that contrasted with Bea's stunned expression. Curious, Bea admitted Bazivador looked extremely noble. Confused at first, the older man reminded him that he was a noble. Bazivador clarified the situation. Though he ran a successful business, the noble title had come later granted to his father in recognition of financial contributions to the kingdom. It was honorary, not hereditary. As the conversation wound down, a servant approached quietly and asked about preparing lunch. Bazivador paused for a moment, thinking about what he wanted to eat. Something familiar and comforting came to mind almost immediately. He turned to Bea and asked if he could recreate a dish he once tasted at Bea's home. With a sheepish grin, Bazivador admitted it was unusual to ask a guest to cook. Still, his craving was strong enough to push the request. Standing up, Bea is where the kitchen was. Zanino gladly offered to guide him and expressed her wish to help before they could head out. Bazivador suddenly objected to his daughter assisting. However, Bea countered with logic, suggesting that more hands in the kitchen would only help. Bazivador strongly protested his daughter joining the cooking, worried she might hurt herself. Embarrassed by the overreaction, she pulled Bea aside. He chuckled, noting how much her father cared. Trying to lighten the mood, Bea asked if she wanted to fold gyoza skins. Surprised at the suggestion, Zanino recalled that it was her father's favorite dish and lit up with understanding. Eager to contribute, she raised her voice with determination and said she would help. Bea smiled, quietly pleased with her enthusiasm. Together, they began gathering ingredients. As Baby pointed out the vegetables needed, Zanino focused carefully. The dining table was filled with vibrant dishes. Bazivador's eyes widened with delight the moment he saw the spread, especially the gyoza. Bea gestured to the staff, inviting everyone to join the meal. He explained there was more than enough for all. Zanino eagerly presented the plate of gyoza, revealing that she had prepared them herself. Emotion welled up as he realized it had all been made for him. Tears streaming down. He held the plate reverently, prompting Zanino to urge him to eat it while it was still warm. Bea added that he had taught Zanino the recipe, so there would be no shortage in the future. Bazivador asked why Bea came. After a brief pause, Bea admitted there was no real reason, he simply wanted to see him. Bea sat in quiet thought, proposing the idea of opening a stall. Fairies fluttered around, celebrating the notion, while Takeru listened beside him on the bench. Despite Takeru's hesitation, Bea pressed on, asking for advice. Faced with indecision, Bea admitted he had too many ideas. Attempting again, Bea snapped his fingers to present options. Out of nowhere, a shower of random goods poofed into existence. The elf warrior Kaage stepped in, observing the chaotic display. She suggested something eye-catching but not too strange. Before Bea could react further, a young girl named Kara approached nervously. Holding a note, she hesitated as she called out to him. Kara curiously examined a beautiful kanzashi hair ornament. Bea explained its use, gently demonstrating how it decorates the hair. Takeru, holding a patterned garment, reflected on the uniqueness of the items. Nearby, girls admired Kara's kanzashi with envy. Their compliments made Bea pause. He realized he had more stock left. Though he set up a stall with hope, Bea faced the reality of a slow start. A crowd formed nearby, but none approached. While sipping tea in thought, he noticed a familiar face. A surprised fairy girl caught his eye. She appeared intrigued, and Bea immediately recognized her as one of the pixies he'd met before. The fairy grew visibly offended when Bea casually referred to her as a pixie. She firmly corrected him, insisting her name was Prish and not to be identified by her race alone. Despite her initial annoyance, Prish looked around with curiosity. The items in Bea's stall caught her attention, and she admitted they were quite beautiful. Though she liked the accessories, Prish noted they were too big for her tiny frame. To solve the size issue, Bea unveiled a collection of doll-sized clothing crafted by his sisters. Overjoyed, Prish thanked Bea enthusiastically. She couldn't wait to try the outfit as she left to change. Bea gave a warm smile and told her to take her time. Bea was greeted by familiar faces Balira and Dariella, who had unexpectedly dropped by his stall. The two confirmed they were free today, and not with Zanbari's group. Small talk followed, including how Kachi was doing. While catching up, Dariella mentioned the downside of being recognized constantly at the market. Her size and wings drew attention. Bei saw an opportunity. With a sudden idea, he asked them for a favor. Clarifying it wouldn't involve hard work, he simply requested they wear his store's accessories and walk through the market to attract attention. The girls were stunned. Dariella immediately understood Bei's plan. He wanted them to act as walking advertisements to attract more customers. Refusing to work for free, Valera asked what they would get in return. Dariella found the request amusing. Bei offered one free product, but that didn't satisfy them. Negotiations escalated, each side pushing for a better deal. Before things got out of hand, a young girl with long hair appeared, urging everyone to stop arguing. The girl, revealed to be a well-known princess hero, greeted Bei warmly. She acknowledged both Valera and Dariella with surprising familiarity, recognizing them from the Red Thunderclap. A calm sky framed the moment as someone hesitantly asked what had caused the earlier conflict to erupt, eager to help. The princess enthusiastically volunteered to join the shop promotion as a model, surprising the others. Realizing it was a royal request, Dariella acknowledged they had no choice but to accept. Valera agreed reluctantly. Before leaving, Dariella insisted on being rewarded with sweets. Bei smiled and casually agreed. Suddenly, someone peeked from nearby. Prish, dressed neatly, floated over in concern. After introductions, Bei asked if she'd join as a model too. Flustered, she hesitated. With a cheerful smile, the princess reassured Prish. Her presence, she promised, would make everything go smoothly. Encouragement followed, as she reminded Prish of her effort to dress up. Hiding such beauty now would be a waste. The group walked through the marketplace, drawing attention. Citizens recognized the princess, Valera, and Dariella instantly and admired their outfits. Children excitedly waved at Prish, calling out to the Miss Fairy. Her shy expression faded as she smiled back brightly. Back at the stall, Bei praised everyone for their efforts. He declared the day a complete success and offered cookies as thanks. While Bei enjoyed the results of the event, Dariella pointed out how excessive things had become. Still, the crowd continued to grow. Without warning, the girls who helped vanished after receiving their sweets. Bei called out, but they were already gone, left alone behind the stall. Bei stared at the bustling crowd. A sense of panic crept in as customers kept arriving. Before things became overwhelming, Prish stepped forward, offering her help with confidence. She promised to do her best alongside him, encouraged by her words. Bei nodded in appreciation. With spirits lifted, both prepared to handle the crowd together. Under the bright morning sun, Bei completed the final sale of the day. The customer handed over exactly 3 bronze coins, marking the end of their market run. A sold-out sign now hung proudly on the stand. Bei stretched his arms with relief while thanking the last group of customers. As the rush settled, his small companion sighed in exhaustion. Hunger finally caught up to her, her stomach growling loud enough to break the silence. Bei glanced at her with a smile. He suggested they get something to eat once the stall was cleaned. With excitement, she pointed toward the food stalls nearby. Her energy returned instantly. Skewers in hand, Bei strolled through the lively market. Around him, stalls bustled with customers. Each new dish caught her eye. Without slowing down, she pointed at another plate, amazed. Bei watched her in disbelief, wondering where she managed to fit it all. Crowds shifted around them as she insisted dessert belonged in a different category altogether. Turning down a narrow alley, he paused and rubbed his temple. The unease grew stronger. Something felt off, as if hidden eyes were tracking their every step. Bei finally spoke, confirming his suspicion they were being followed. His companion reacted with shock, her joy turning to alarm. While walking along the wall, Bei dismissed the idea that the mafia might be after them again. A cloaked figure shouted in panic as they rushed forward. Bei turned in surprise, immediately recognizing a threat in the stranger's rapid movements. Without hesitation, Bei stepped back and urged his companions to run. They needed to disappear into the crowd before being cornered. The chase had begun. He glanced up just in time to see the attacker leap from the wall. Their agility was impressive. Bei steadied himself, ready for confrontation. As the figure landed and removed her hood, her identity was revealed: a woman calm and composed. A second woman appeared, rushing after the mysterious attacker. She called out in frustration, scolding her for acting recklessly, pointing at the new arrival. Bei asked if she was the leader, flustered. The woman backed away quickly, insisting she had no intention of starting a fight. Introductions followed shortly after. The man, Chanteron, explained he was a merchant from the eastern continent. Saline, the woman in question, admitted her motives. She wanted to test Barry's strength firsthand, intrigued by what she had heard. The tension eased. Saline was scolded light-heartedly by her master, and even the fairy noted they seemed like kind people. Bay tried to respond to Chanter's earlier comment, but hesitation filled his voice. Saline quickly stepped in, delivering a slap to push her master to the point. Chanter finally confessed his intentions. He wanted to be friends. Smiling nonchalantly, Chanter repeated his offer. Saline, ever the realist, urged him to also discuss business matters. With a shift in tone, Chanter offered to continue the conversation aboard his ship. He hinted at more important topics yet to be discussed, prompting interest from Bay and Prish. Before moving forward, Bay introduced himself and his companion. Prish cheerfully greeted the pair, calling out their names with excitement. Bay gazed at the docked vessel in awe. Its elaborate design and gleaming ornaments made him wonder if all Eastern ships were built to impress. Chanter explained that he'd painted the ship like an amulet for good luck. Bay suspected it took more than luck to own such a ship at that age. Saline stepped in and clarified the truth. The ship wasn't Chanter's. It actually belonged to his older brother. Bay blinked in surprise, caught off guard by the confession. With a flat expression, Saline added that the ship had been borrowed without permission. Chanter wailed dramatically, confessing he couldn't possibly ask his brother, who never lent him anything. Bay stared blankly, slowly realizing that Chanter was. Chanter led them into the ship's storage area, confidently stating that his visit was well planned. Prish stared at the stacked goods, amazed by the volume. Chanter explained they were rare items from the East, meant to prove his worth to his brother. Basie inspected the merchandise and noted its high quality. Meanwhile, Saline commented that her master's judgment might not align with market demand, despite the effort. She predicted no profits would come from this. Prish asked about a specific box, intrigued by its contents. Inside was a food item called Bayman Grilled, long-lasting and unfamiliar. Bay reflected on how many unusual things the Eastern region had to offer. Bay stared at a familiar package, trying to recall where he'd seen it before. Recognition struck. It was cut mochi, a food from his original world. Curious about inventory, he asked how much of the Bayman was in stock. Chanter answered confidently. 6 crates, enough for both sales and emergencies. Without hesitation, Bay smiled and asked to buy them. After pausing, Beatty decided he wanted more. Tea leaves, seasonings, everything. Chanter blinked in confusion, surprised at the sudden eagerness. Reaching into his pouch, Bay laid out gold bars on the table. He looked up and asked if it would be enough to cover the cost. Chanter froze at the sight of the gold bars. His voice trembled, struggling to process the overwhelming offer. Before he could respond, Saline raised her hand calmly. She reminded him that even Bay's judgment alone held serious weight. She acknowledged that Bay's conditions were more than fair. However, she declined selling all of the products outright. Chanter turned toward her in confusion. He asked why she stopped the deal when everything seemed beneficial. With a composed expression, Saline explained her reasoning. While profit was important, she believed in balancing business with respect for personal relationships. Saline explained that selling everything to one buyer would limit distribution and hinder connections with other merchants. Chanter lowered his head, understanding her point. Bay reassured them both, noting that merchants naturally care about their network and business future. To ease concerns, Bay promised to promote Chanter's name in the capital, relying on his many acquaintances there. Filled with gratitude, Chanter expressed his thanks. Bay, in turn, encouraged him to improve and asked that he be more mindful of Saline's efforts. Trying to sound sincere, Chanter pledged to do his best. Saline, unconvinced, watched him closely and muttered a quiet remark about his unreliability. Under the moonlit sky, Bay explained how their dinner ended up being mochi, or rather, Bayman. With a nostalgic smile, Bay mentioned he had soy sauce and sugar. The flavor reminded him of New Year traditions from his previous life. As everyone enjoyed the food, Prish suddenly made a request. Her fairy friends wanted clothing, and she eagerly begged Bay to help, while food was being served. Bay gave a quick warning. Kachi, in particular, was told to eat carefully and not rush. He explained that sticky food like mochi could be dangerous for the elderly. Kachi, who happened to be a 1000-year-old elf, froze in quiet disbelief. Steam rose from the chewy Bayman resting on the plate. Someone hesitated, realizing its dangerous texture. Despite encouragement, doubt lingered. Its stickiness made even simple chewing feel like a cautious task. Tears streamed down the girl's face as she sat alone, overwhelmed by cruel teasing. Harsh words echoed nearby, turning whispers into arguments. Some girls tried to calm the situation, but tension only grew. One girl stepped forward, trying to mediate. Her words were met with resistance. From a distance, Bei silently watched the confrontation. A tiny fairy perched on his shoulder, equally surprised. Navari entered the room holding a first aid box. Bei turned his head, alert and curious. The air felt heavy, uncertain. As Navari approached, her expression softened, the atmosphere brightened. The once crying girl now smiled while holding a small mirror. Navari stood behind her, gently supportive. In the peaceful clearing, the girls gathered around, enjoying their time grooming and chatting happily. Bei, puzzled by the scene, questioned their joy. Trying to help, she pointed out a flaw in the boy's messy hair. Her gesture, though harmless, triggered a harsh response. Later, Navari recounted the incident with discomfort, explaining the boy's sudden outburst. While the boy sat alone in silence, others discussed the ongoing conflict. The sisters struggled to keep peace among the children, recognizing the deeper tension that had always existed between them. Bei offered to step in. He believed talking to boy might help resolve things. As he approached the troubled child, determination filled his eyes. He gave instructions calmly, asking Prish to accompany Navari in case healing magic was needed. Sitting beside the boy, Bei listened quietly. The child explained he hadn't intended to upset anyone. When pressed for a reason, his gaze dropped, unable to find a proper explanation. Emotions surfaced as the boy revealed his frustrations. Girls always surrounded him but focused only on each other. Understanding the root of the conflict, Bei reflected on his actions. Though he acted in kindness, his favoritism had consequences. Guilt weighed heavily on Bei's mind. The quarrel that unfolded wasn't one person's fault alone. A small gesture had led to misunderstanding. Encouraged by Bei's words, the boy brightened and promised to think of a way for everyone to play together. Leaning in, Bei offered a quiet but meaningful lesson. He urged the boy to be gentle toward people he cared about. The boy quickly denied any feelings, flustered by the implication. Prish reacted with frustration, accusing Bei of teasing. After resolving the emotional tension, Bei changed the subject. With a smile, he asked Prish about the nearest toy store. Inside the toy shop, Bei examined a row of stuffed animals. One stood out. He nodded with approval, satisfied with the choice. While choosing a gift, Prish questioned Bei's decision to visit a store. She reminded him that he often used magic to create items, and wondered why he didn't do the same this time. Bei explained that magic required a clear image in his mind. Without a solid blueprint, he couldn't recreate anything properly. She pointed out the contradiction. He could imagine complex machines, yet couldn't form a mental image of a stuffed toy. Reflecting deeply, Bei tried to recall his own childhood. Wandering past a display, he questioned how far back he needed to go in memory to find something meaningful and usable. As he paused, the display in front of him began to glow. Something within the memory sparked a magical reaction. Bei examined the shelf curiously, recognizing a familiar object from his world, a baseball bat. She confirmed that she crafted the bat and invited Bei into her store to see more. Intrigued, he followed, wondering how something from his past life ended up here. Suspicion grew in his mind, despite Prish's protests. Bei stepped through the entrance. He believed there was something more behind the encounter. He weighed his curiosity against his original goal. Though he needed to buy a gift, the possibility of another reincarnated person tipped the scale. Frustrated by his sudden detour, Prish called after him again. Bei, however, had already made up his mind. Bei stepped inside the shop, greeted by a confident woman who introduced herself as Celine, the owner and woodworker. She quickly identified him by name, noting the letter he had written. Bei returned the greeting politely, while Celine expressed how rare it was to have a customer in her shop. While showing off her products, Celine picked up a wooden club, though her designs were impressive. Curious, Bei examined the club more closely. Celine explained how most clubs were built for strength but lacked aesthetic appeal. Rather than settle for the ordinary, Celine chose to craft elegant, slim models. For her, beauty mattered as much as function. Celine held up the club proudly, showcasing her craftsmanship. Her eyes sparkled with satisfaction after achieving the exact design she had envisioned. Through years of refining her work, Bei watched silently as she praised her own talent with exaggerated flair. Despite her skill, frustration lingered beneath her smile. The people in the capital failed to appreciate her artistry. Bei paused, considering the situation carefully. Seeing her potential and determination, he leaned forward and spoke her name. A smile returned to his face as he extended his hand with an invitation. He asked her to move to his village, a new place where her talent could thrive and be welcomed. Bei calmly suggested that if the shop faced decline, then relocation should be considered. Saline turned to him, surprised by his concern. Though she appreciated it, she asked what reason he had for suggesting such a bold idea. He responded sincerely. Showing her a sample of her own crafted work, Bei expressed how sad it felt to see such skill overlooked. A sudden realization lit up Saline's face. She held his hand excitedly, interpreting his words as admiration. Her smile widened, seeing him now as a genuine supporter of her craft. Though Bei hesitated at her phrasing, he nodded with a gentle smile. To Saline, a fan's request was enough. Saline teased Bei with a playful question, wondering if he planned to take her away immediately. Instead of rushing, Bei explained that some preparations were still necessary. He asked her to take time to pack up. Before leaving, Bei requested to take the club with him. Though Saline warned it wasn't suitable for combat, he intended to use it to restore connections, not for fighting. Back in the village, the young girl swung the club powerfully, sending the ball high into the sky. Laughter filled the air. The children gathered around, amazed by the swing. Smiles replaced tension, and the club, once a display item, became the bridge that brought everyone together. The girl looked to Bei for guidance after hitting the ball. He calmly instructed her to drop the bat and run to first base, watching the game unfold with interest. With a quick nod, the boy reached for her hand and pulled her toward the base. Their hands met in a brief moment of understanding, tension replaced by teamwork. From a distance, Bei and Navari watched the children playing. Curious about the game, Navari asked what it was called. Bei explained. It was baseball, and offered to teach her. While giving instructions, Bei leaned a little too close, flustered. Navari tried to hide her embarrassment. Saline arrived at the field unexpectedly, drawn by curiosity. Seeing the children using her crafted club in a game sparked her excitement. She explained her visit, saying she wanted to see how the club was being used. Closing the distance, Saline expressed her interest this time. Not just in the club. Bei responded with polite laughter, while Navari watched nearby, clearly uneasy about the scene unfolding before her. Before anything could escalate, the children called out. They hadn't forgotten Bei's promise to teach them more about baseball. Takru stands on the baseball field holding a bat while students watch nearby. A fast pitch approaches. He focuses carefully and swings strongly, striking the ball with force and sending it flying far. Students react with excitement after the powerful hit. Some admire the impressive homer run while others look surprised. Takru notices the ball flying far beyond the field and realizes it left the playing area. Takru leaves the field to search for the missing ball. Nearby students relax around a courtyard table playing cards. They briefly notice him passing while he carefully scans the area. A girl holding cards talks about the baseball game she watched earlier. Takru listens calmly, but explains he is not good at quick reactions, despite the powerful hit he made. Takru walks toward the school gate while continuing to search for the ball. A girl nearby notices him arriving as he carefully checks the path and surrounding area. Takru arrives near a balcony and greets Zanino while asking about the condition of the old man Bazivador. Nearby, a cheerful girl named Bei notices him unexpectedly. Bei approaches Takru with curiosity. After noticing something in his hand, she observes the small object carefully while trying to understand what he was describing earlier. The small ball suddenly falls between them, and Bei quickly catches it. Takru apologizes for the accident while explaining that the ball unexpectedly dropped from the sky. A mysterious man wearing glasses watches the scene from nearby. His attention focuses on Takru while he quietly questions why someone would approach Lady Zanino. Several observers begin whispering after noticing the situation. They recognize the mysterious man and realize he might be connected to the president, making the moment more serious. Bei stands beside Takru while several attendants suddenly rush forward and bow respectfully. Their sudden arrival surprises him. Curious about the scene, Takru quietly wonders who these unfamiliar people are. One attendant explains that they are simply Bai's escort assigned to watch over her safety. Takru looks across the balcony area and slowly realizes she comes from an important family. Bei gently rests her cheek on her hand while expressing quiet exhaustion. Constant supervision from escorts follows her everywhere. Living under such careful watch has gradually become tiring for her. Nearby, an older guardian loudly refuses the idea of Bei going out alone. His strict reaction shows how seriously the family protects her safety and reputation in public. After hearing the restrictions, Takru thinks carefully while examining a thin string on his hand. He begins considering a simple idea that might help Bei move around more freely. Takru presents a small dagger while explaining his simple idea. He believes carrying a weapon might allow Bei to move more freely outside. Hearing this suggestion, Bei quickly understands his intention. Excited by the idea, Bei happily accepts the dagger from Takru. She proudly holds the weapon while explaining that crafting items is one of Takru's hobbies. However, the escorts immediately rush forward and stop her. They firmly refuse to allow Bei to handle such a dangerous object, fearing it could threaten her safety. Despite their protests, Bei stubbornly rejects their instructions. She refuses to end the outing early and insists on continuing her time outside before returning home. Growing frustrated with the restrictions, Bei suddenly grabs Takru's arm. Determined to resist the escorts, she loudly declares that she will not go home yet. Bei suddenly pulls Takru forward and runs away from the escorts. Her dress flows behind her as she rushes across the path. The escorts attempt to stop them, turning back briefly. Bei angrily warns the escorts not to follow them. Her expression shows rare frustration. She threatens to resent them if they continue interfering. The escorts freeze in shock after hearing her harsh words. Their expressions turn stiff and silent as they hesitate, unsure how to respond to her sudden anger. Later, Takru and Bei stop near a quiet gate outside the building. Takru calmly checks on her condition while giving her time to settle down. Sitting together on the steps, Bei reflects on her behavior with embarrassment. Takru reassures her gently, explaining that strong emotions are natural during moments of rebellion. Bei sits quietly while reflecting on her frustration. Takru advises her that during moments like this, releasing stress honestly can help calm overwhelming emotions. After calming down, Takru asks Bei whether she has somewhere she would like to visit. Seeing her hesitation, he kindly offers to accompany her. Bei suddenly becomes curious and looks up at Takru with excitement. She asks if he would go with her to visit a weapon shop. Takru remembers that he often crafts weapons as a hobby. Hearing this, Bei confidently believes he must also have many weapons available. With bright excitement, Bei decides she wants a weapon for herself. She mentions a famous craftsman connected to her family and promises to introduce Takru soon. Walking through the quiet streets, Takru follows Zanino toward a house she confidently selected. Her determined attitude surprises him, and he realizes she has already decided where they should go next. They arrive at a traditional workshop where an elderly craftsman rests outside. Recognizing Zanino immediately, the old man greets her warmly and comments that it has been quite a while. Zanino respectfully introduces Takru to the craftsman. She explains that he is interested in weapons. The old man listens calmly while observing Takru with curiosity. Hearing about the craftsman's reputation, Takru and Zanino react with admiration. They realize he is considered the capital's finest weapon maker, though the humble craftsman denies such praise. After the introductions settle, Zanino explains her intention clearly. She asks if Takru could purchase one of the weapons made by the famous craftsman for her. The old craftsman studies Takru carefully and asks whether he understands blacksmithing. Takru smiles calmly and admits he has no formal knowledge, while the craftsman confidently assures them about his product quality. Takru explains that his experience mainly comes from personal experimentation. Through repeated attempts and mistakes, he has spent time crafting different weapons, simply as practice and curiosity. Over time, Takru continued creating more weapons. The number gradually increased while he improved his techniques, producing many items without realizing how large his collection had become. Soon, several large crates filled with weapons appear inside the workshop. Seeing the overwhelming amount, the old craftsman warns Takru to stop bringing more because the floor might collapse. Observing the situation, the craftsman expresses surprise. He remarks that someone who underestimates weapon making usually struggles, yet Takru somehow managed to create many impressive weapons already. After examining the weapons carefully, Takru calmly decides to purchase every one of them. Zanino happily supports his decision, believing the weapons show impressive craftsmanship. The old craftsman watches Takru with curiosity and remarks that his weapon is still inferior compared to his own work. Takru responds calmly. While Zanino observes the discussion with interest, satisfied with their interest, the craftsman suddenly invites them deeper inside the building. He decides to reveal his true craftsmanship and leads them toward another hidden area. Takaraku and Zanino follow him into a concealed workshop filled with many carefully stored items. The craftsman explains these are experimental prototypes that cannot be sold publicly. While examining the room, Takru notices many thin metallic pieces stored along the walls. Curious about their purpose, he wonders whether these objects are special accessories or weapon parts. Takru carefully examines the thin metal pieces displayed inside the workshop. The craftsman notices his curiosity and laughs quietly, explaining that most visitors usually misunderstand their true purpose. The old craftsman proudly reveals the truth behind the strange items. He explains that the famous Lord's creations, including those thin pieces, are actually designed to function as weapons. Listening carefully, Takeru and Zanino learn that the craftsman has recently focused on creating lighter equipment. Many of his inventions were made for adventurers who value mobility. Excited by the explanation, Zanino quickly points toward one of the weapons. With bright enthusiasm, she eagerly asks the craftsman if she could receive one for herself. Zanino confidently explains her reasoning to the craftsman. If she owns a weapon for self-defense, she believes her father will finally accept her wish to move around more freely. The old craftsman suddenly studies Takeru more carefully while noticing sweat on his face. Suspicion grows in his mind as he wonders what kind of person Takeru truly is. Takeru calmly responds while holding the curved weapon in his hand. He questions whether the escorts and others might be slightly too protective of Zanino's safety. Sharing his thoughts, Takeru explains that in modern times even women and children can become adventurers. Carrying a weapon for protection has become completely normal. Hearing this reasoning, the old craftsman slowly nods in understanding. He explains that people who lack power often need weapons to protect themselves from danger. Zanino listens closely as the craftsman agrees with Takeru's opinion. Encouraged by the discussion, she becomes hopeful that obtaining a weapon may finally convince her father. Takeru reminds the craftsman about the promise of giving Zanino a weapon. However, the old man quickly refuses and firmly declares he will not hand such an item to her. Takeru protests playfully and challenges the craftsman's reasoning, laughing loudly. He argues that someone with strong determination should not be compared unfairly to Zanino. The craftsman then turns his attention towards Zanino and asks an important question. He wonders what truly matters when someone chooses to carry a weapon. Takeru suggests that knowledge and responsibility are important since weapons can be dangerous. The craftsman listens carefully while holding one of the weapons thoughtfully. Finally, the old craftsman explains the true meaning behind wielding a weapon. He declares that anyone who carries one must possess the resolve to take another life. After hearing the craftsman's harsh explanation, Zanino immediately reacts with shock. She quickly protests, insisting that she never intended to harm anyone or take another person's life. The old craftsman calmly responds while gripping the weapon firmly. He explains that regardless of intention, carrying a weapon always means accepting the possibility of using it. Zanino turns toward Takeru with uncertainty and asks whether he truly possesses such determination. Takeru pauses quietly as he considers her serious question. Takeru explains that growing up in a rural village required hunting mountain animals for food. Over time, he became accustomed to using weapons for survival. The craftsman acknowledges Takeru's experience, but reminds Zanino that the capital is different. Here, weapons are not tools for hunting but instruments that may harm people. The old craftsman looks at Zanino seriously and warns that giving a weapon to someone like her could be dangerous. He believes she might hurt others rather than protect herself. Takeru quietly reflects on the craftsman's words while observing the workshop. He understands that the true reason for using a weapon is an important question. Zanino listens carefully before speaking again with firm determination. She says the fear surrounding weapons no longer matters to her and sincerely asks the craftsman to give her one. Takeru hesitates and suggests they stop the discussion, reminding her that weapons are frightening tools. However, Zanino refuses to step back from her decision. Standing quietly, Zanino reflects on her life so far. She realizes she has lived without truly understanding the world, and now she wants to face reality. The old craftsman quietly reflects on Zanino's determination. He admits that as Baron Bazivador's daughter, her situation is complicated, and even thinking about such matters must feel embarrassing. Zanino then speaks with strong determination. She explains that her wish is not only about gaining power but also about disciplining her heart and broadening her understanding. After expressing her thoughts, Zanino calms down and admits she still lacks the necessary resolve. She decides she will think about it carefully after speaking with her father. Later that evening, Zanino thanks Takeru for spending time with her. Smiling brightly, she promises that they should spend time together again in the future. As Zanino leaves, the craftsman quietly asks whether she is going through a rebellious phase. Takeru simply smiles and watches her walk away under the night sky. Walking alone beneath the glowing street lamps, Zanino slowly moves along the quiet road. Her thoughts drift back to the conversation earlier that day. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the city, Takeru lies comfortably on a bed while resting after the long day. His mind drifts back to the earlier events involving Zanino and the craftsman. At a quiet house near the coast, Takeru sits beside Bae while enjoying a freshly cooked fish meal. Satisfaction spreads across the table as everyone begins eating peacefully. The pleasant taste surprises Takeru. On the plate rests a perfectly cooked fish decorated with herbs and lemon. Takeru studies the dish carefully while holding his fork, silently considering how such a simple meal tastes unusually good. Sitting comfortably on the sofa, Takeru shares the meal with friends while praising the cooking. Although the food impresses him greatly, he calmly admits something still feels slightly unusual. While thinking quietly, Takeru imagines the sea and wonders about fishing himself someday. Curiosity slowly grows as the delicious meal inspires him to consider catching fish personally. Soon after finishing the meal, Takeru explains that he plans to try fishing soon. Meanwhile, Zanino mentions leaving with Kachi for a mission on an uninhabited island. Bei suddenly appears beside Takeru with excitement shining across her face. Floating close to him, she firmly decides to accompany him on the upcoming fishing trip, landing beside him. However, Takeru quickly warns Bei about possible dangers at sea. The thought of deep water and hungry fish startles her slightly, making the cheerful fairy react nervously. Despite the warning, Bei quickly regains her confidence. Although she cannot fish herself, she insists on joining Takeru anyway, claiming she can at least accompany him and keep him entertained. After thinking for a moment, Takeru sighs quietly and accepts the situation. Realizing the trip might be troublesome, he decides inviting another companion would make the fishing outing easier. Meanwhile, Bei begins listing possible people Takeru could invite. Unfortunately, everyone in the capital appears busy with important tasks, leaving very few available companions for the planned fishing trip. Takeru suddenly raises a finger while smiling calmly, showing he has already thought of a solution. Bei watches curiously as he confidently announces that he has an idea. Soon afterward, Takeru walks through the capital streets and approaches a large elegant mansion. Tall walls and detailed architecture surround the building, giving the place a quiet yet impressive atmosphere. Inside the mansion, Takeru calmly explains that the building is known as Grandma Glen's Comfort Time. The peaceful cafe-like place once surprised him greatly during his first visit. Moments later, a graceful woman named Glen appears wearing neat work clothes. Her warm expression greets them politely while she asks whether they have been enjoying their time in the capital. Standing beside Takeru, Bei looks curious while meeting Glen for the first time. Meanwhile, Glen happily shows her outfit, proudly explaining that the maid-style work clothes look cute. Inside the cozy cafe, Glen calmly introduces Gan, a woman who often helped her with many tasks at the church. Although she once went out frequently, the busy cafe recently kept her occupied. Nearby, Takeru smiles warmly while greeting Glen again. Despite meeting many times before, he jokingly remarks that he still cannot clearly see her true form as usual. While tea is prepared, Takeru politely thanks everyone for welcoming him into the cafes. During the conversation, he also mentions that another person should be present soon. Upstairs, an elderly man notices the unusual noise from below. Curious about the activity, he steps out calmly while holding his pipe and realizes a rare visitor has arrived. Soon the elderly man approaches the group and notices Bei floating beside Takeru. With friendly curiosity, he greets the small fairy and asks her name during their first meeting. Inside the cafe, Takeru gently reassures Bei while introducing her to the elderly man. Nervous at first, the small fairy hesitates slightly before quietly saying her name. The elderly man calmly smokes his pipe while observing Bei with curiosity. He casually wonders whether the tiny fairy visited the cafe simply to enjoy some tea. Smiling confidently, Takeru finally reveals the real reason for his visit. Standing proudly, he explains that he came to invite everyone along for a relaxing fishing trip. Bei suddenly becomes worried that the conversation might turn awkward if Takeru continues speaking too directly. She quickly warns him to explain his request more carefully. Ignoring the concern, Takeru casually repeats the invitation again. Hearing this, Bei reacts dramatically with shock, raising her arms while loudly demanding he stop repeating those words. Inside the cafe hall, the elderly man suddenly becomes excited after hearing Takeru mention fishing. His eyes brighten as he happily reveals that he truly loves fishing. Standing together in the cafe, Takeru explains the simple fishing trip idea. The elderly man listens carefully while calmly smoking his pipe and considering the invitation. After thinking briefly, the elderly man suggests fishing somewhere nearby. According to him, they could easily enjoy fishing along the peaceful sea close to the capital. Hearing the plan, Takeru begins considering what equipment and preparation might be necessary for the trip. Realizing he needs time, he politely asks for a short moment to prepare. With excitement returning to his face, the elderly man confidently agrees to the plan. He raises his thumb and decides to meet everyone at the fishing harbor in 2 hours. After the discussion ends, the elderly man leaves the cafe in a cheerful mood. Takeru watches him walk away, while Glen notices his excitement about the upcoming fishing trip. Glen kindly tells Takeru to wait inside until the elderly man finishes preparing. She decides to prepare special tea and sweets, while Takeru calmly agrees and waits patiently. Soon delicious desserts and sweets are prepared inside the cafe. Bei happily floats beside the table, admiring the colorful treats while enjoying the peaceful moment before the trip. Later, Takeru and Bei arrive at the fishing harbor near the capital. Standing beside the water with fishing rods, they carefully observe the harbor while searching for their companion. Before long, an old man wearing sunglasses approaches them along the harbor steps. Takeru realizes he is the retired weapon shop owner who came after receiving Dazzle's message. While waiting at the harbor, Takeru begins wondering why their companion has not arrived yet. Beside him, the elderly man casually remembers their mischievous childhood adventures together. Confused by the strange comment, Takeru asks for clarification. The elderly man calmly explains that the person they are waiting for might actually arrive using a boat. Before Takeru can understand the explanation, Bei suddenly notices something unusual in the sky above the harbor. Excited and surprised, she urgently calls Takeru's attention. Looking upward, Takeru sees a large glowing circular object floating above the sea. The mysterious structure shines brightly, creating confusion as he wonders if it might be some strange flying device. Moments later, the elderly man calmly greets the arriving group. Several unusual companions appear beside him, suggesting that the mysterious object brought them there to join the fishing trip. Seeing the unexpected group arrive, Takeru stands frozen with confusion. The elderly man calmly remarks that with so many people joining, Takeru might feel like an extra. Still puzzled, Takeru asks about the strange flying vehicle used for their arrival. The elderly man casually explains that the unusual method was necessary because many companions decided to come. While observing the newcomers closely, Bei notices something unusual about them. Their presence carries a mysterious aura, making Takeru quietly wonder about the true nature of these companions. As the group gathers near the harbor, Takeru studies them carefully. Their appearance strangely reminds him of legendary figures, similar to the famous Seven Gods of Fortune. Soon the elderly man activates a floating plate for travel. After confirming preparations are complete, he calmly instructs everyone to step onto it so they can head toward the coast. While standing on the floating plate, Takeru notices a massive magical barrier surrounding them. Confused by its scale, he quietly wonders why such a powerful protective barrier is necessary. Beside him, Bei begins thinking about possible reasons for the barrier. She imagines other passing ships accidentally colliding with them if the flying device remains visible. Listening calmly, the elderly man smokes his pipe while adding that there is actually a more important reason for creating such a strong barrier. With a serious expression, he explains that being discovered would cause troublesome situations. Since many of his companions are landowners and influential figures, secrecy becomes very important. Hearing this explanation, Bei nervously observes the mysterious group again. Their dignified presence and confident posture give off an unmistakable noble aura. While standing inside the magical barrier, Takeru calmly observes the unusual group around him. Floating beside him, Bei realizes the situation feels extremely strange and overwhelming. Despite the tension, Takeru remains relaxed and explains that their goal is simple. According to him, they only came here to enjoy fishing as originally planned. Smiling confidently, Takeru casually clarifies that the friends he intended to invite were only retired men with plenty of free time. Hearing this explanation, Bei looks shocked as she observes the intimidating companions surrounding them. Their serious expressions and unusual appearance make the situation feel far more serious. Just as the confusion continues, the elderly man quietly calls out to Takeru. His calm voice signals that he wants to say something important next. As the group gathers on the floating platform, a towering beast-like warrior suddenly reacts strongly to Takeru's earlier words. His intimidating presence shocks both Takeru and Bei. The sudden reaction frightens Bei, causing her to panic and beg not to be eaten. Realizing the misunderstanding, Takeru quickly apologizes while trying to calm the tense situation. Moments later, the tension disappears as the companions begin laughing loudly. Amused by the misunderstanding, they accept Takeru's explanation about inviting relaxed old men with free time. The large warrior then approaches Takeru with interest. Impressed by his calm attitude, he pats Takeru's head and praises his courage for speaking so casually. Embarrassed by the attention, Takeru smiles modestly and explains that he is simply an ordinary villager. Meanwhile, Bei struggles to believe his humble claim. While standing on the floating platform, the elderly man suddenly notices something landing on him. Looking down, he realizes that the small fairy Bei has quietly dropped nearby. After landing, Bei looks exhausted and complains dramatically about the situation. She explains that staying close to Takeru constantly drains her energy and shortens her lifespan. Watching the scene calmly, the elderly man and his friend observe Takeru with interest. Both of them quietly agree that the young villager is an unusually fascinating person. Meanwhile, several of the mysterious companions gather around Takru while studying him closely. His calm behavior continues to attract their attention as they observe him curiously. Soon the group finally begins fishing together along the coast. With excitement growing, the elderly man proudly lifts a large fish while Takru continues catching more nearby. Abrak, an uninhabited island, is currently under critical development. A small group arrives at the quiet shore to begin their work. Nearby, workers unload raw materials from a cart and arrange wooden crates along the coast. Takru oversees the process, while others move tools and supplies into position. Suddenly, a strange sound rises from offshore, drawing the attention of two children. On the beach, Avel recognizes the visitor who has just arrived. Time has passed since their last meeting, yet the reunion happens naturally. With a cheerful expression, the traveler reveals the purpose of the visit. Fresh provisions appear, brought to support the island's progress. Avel arrives carrying several fish and invites the others to share the meal with everyone. The sudden display of food surprises the man standing before him as the fish fall one after another. He explains that the fish were caught earlier and turned out much larger than expected, since he has been eating fish every day recently. Seeing the large amount of food, the leader calls everyone to take a short break from work. Soon, the people begin organizing the meal. Those confident in their cooking skills step forward to help prepare the fish. Takerkru begins helping carry the fish, while others go to call the workers in the forest, so everyone can join the meal. Work on the island continues steadily as people move supplies and cooperate with each other. Nearby, Navar speaks about the island's future with confidence. Although the project will take time, he believes the island will eventually become an impressive place. Looking at the busy scene, Avel feels assured that everything will be fine even if he returns to his home village soon. Without hesitation, Avel quickly asks Takru to prepare a submarine the next morning. He explains that leaving soon is necessary if he wants to reach his village in time. Takru reacts with confusion after hearing the sudden request. Avel simply explains that he decided on the plan just moments ago. Avel suddenly admits that he feels nostalgic. The unexpected feeling confuses him, and his sudden change of mood leaves Takru, surprised as the conversation shifts in an unusual direction. Takru struggles to understand Avel's carefree behavior. Acting without much consideration often leaves others confused. Despite the confusion, Takru admits that people believe everything will remain safe because Avel is around. Others soon remind Avel that his presence is still important. Children need someone to watch over them, and strong protection is valuable even if old threats no longer interfere. Some people without homes are living there, while the warehouses also require careful management. Avel calmly tells Takru not to worry too much about the situation. According to him, things will settle naturally with time. His relaxed attitude contrasts with Takru's concern. Frustration finally builds up inside Takru. He reminds Avel that acting carelessly often forces others to deal with difficult problems. One memory in particular stands out, when a serious conflict once caused chaos in the church. The tense moment shows how dangerous those situations had been. After calming down, Takru decides to assign someone responsible for watching the church and managing the warehouses. The chosen helper accepts the responsibility without hesitation. With the matter settled for now, Takru quietly asks Avel for cooperation moving forward. Avel repeats his plan to return to his home village the next day. Takru quickly follows him, urging him to move fast and head to the capital if he truly plans to leave soon. Elsewhere on the island, Bae hears about Avel's plan to go back to the village. The news catches her attention as she wonders about the situation. Before leaving, Avel gathers several people and asks them to watch over the island while he is gone. One offers to protect the church while others express their willingness to help take care of the children. Another man steps forward and decides to manage the warehouses, explaining that he owes Bae a favor. Avel suggests storing food in the warehouse for emergencies. While showing an example, he mentions a preserved meat called baiman. Curiosity spreads through the room as someone explains that the food is commonly eaten in the eastern regions. Hearing the discussion, a man decides to approach Avel directly. He asks Bae for permission to leave his seat so he can speak with Avel about business. Permission is granted without hesitation. Avel calmly tells him that once the conversation is finished, he can return home afterward. One enthusiastically invites him to relax and drink together like they used to, while another mentions that someone else has been hoping to see him. A woman with a calm expression agrees to take responsibility for the task that was just discussed. Not long after, Avel walks through the town streets, thinking about how quickly everything was resolved. While he wonders what to do next, he suddenly hears someone calling his name. Prish appears nearby and approaches him. Aval looks surprised, wondering where she had been since he had not noticed her earlier. Explains that she usually follows wherever he goes, though she keeps her presence hidden most of the time. Instead of discussing it further, Aval suggests taking a short walk around the capital. Prish happily agrees, and follows beside him. Aval and Prish move across the capital while exploring the city together. Prish leaps across rooftops with ease, watching the streets from above while Aval continues walking below. The peaceful evening sky spreads over the city, as he spends a moment observing the calm surroundings. Night begins to fall, and Aval realizes that it has grown late while reaching for the door. He suddenly remembers that someone important is not around tonight. Inside the building, several people notice someone returning and greet him warmly. Their cheerful welcome surprises Aval soon after. Takru appears and speaks to Aval. He explains that he was also surprised by the situation when he returned earlier. Prish excitedly explains the loud noise around the building. Everyone has been preparing a farewell party because Aval plans to return to his village. Another woman approaches and explains that she heard about Aval leaving soon. After hearing the news, she gathered people around the town. The idea of a party quickly spread, and many agreed to participate in the preparation. Soon the room fills with people and dishes prepared for the celebration. Several volunteers explain that they also wanted to help, offering food as a gesture of thanks. As everyone gathers, the host announces that the main guest has finally arrived. The farewell celebration is ready to begin. During the gathering, Aval notices Denko standing quietly nearby. Seeing his uneasy expression, Aval asks what is troubling him. After gathering his courage, Denko suddenly declares that he wants to stay in the capital. His bold statement surprises the people around him, drawing their full attention. Denko explains that he recently met Rim and several others in the capital. Spending time with them made him feel comfortable. Hearing the request, Aval calmly responds that the decision is not his to make. Instead, Denko should discuss the matter with someone else who has the authority to decide. Aval then reminds him that permission must come from his father in the village. He calmly tells Denko that if he truly wants to stay in the capital, he should face his father and discuss the matter properly. Beyond the door, a quiet house suddenly appears. Leaves drift through the air as the familiar home stands in front of them. Realizing the door connects directly to his village, Denko rushes inside with excitement. Others nearby question how such a strange door can lead directly to Denko's house. The situation sounds unbelievable, yet the connection clearly works. Soon another person tries the mysterious door and discovers that it can also lead to their own home. Through the mysterious door, Aval arrives at a familiar house in the village. Children quickly rush toward him with excitement. One boy stands beside Aval and proudly explains that he has grown a little since their last meeting. Soon, the boy eagerly demonstrates what he has been practicing. Magic skills that he trained recently are proudly mentioned as he tries to show his progress. At that moment, a woman appears and introduces herself as Baya's mother. She politely asks whether her mischievous son caused any trouble while staying in the capital. The conversation quickly becomes friendly and relaxed. Noticing their guests may not have eaten yet, Aval finishes visiting the village and prepares to leave through the strange door. The children wave happily and promise to see him again tomorrow. Moments later, Takru reacts with disbelief after learning how Aval returned. The simple method of traveling through the door makes the submarine plan seem completely unnecessary. Using the door feels too easy and lacks the sense of a real journey, which leaves Takru even more confused. Takru sits down in frustration while thinking about how much effort he spent worrying earlier. Nearby, Prish tries to calm him while Aval quietly wonders if his actions made him look foolish. The tense mood slowly turns into awkward humor. During the lively gathering, some people quietly comment on the unusual personalities around them. Watching the situation unfold, one woman begins laughing softly. She explains that the chaos feels completely normal whenever Bae is involved. Meanwhile, Aval approaches Bae and places a hand on his shoulder. He gently reminds him that his moody nature often creates confusing situations. A woman then steps closer to Aval and invites him to visit the capital again someday. With a shy expression, she admits she will wait for that moment and hopes he will not forget about her. One person asks Aval to visit the church when he returns, while children excitedly suggest playing baseball together again in the future. Before the gathering continues, one girl reminds Aval that she, Prish, and Takru will be waiting for him. Soon afterward, Aval looks over the prepared dishes on the table. Realizing the food will become cold, he begins the long-awaited farewell party as everyone gathers around the meal. Deep under the sea, a submarine travels quietly through the water while fish swim around it. On a bench inside the submarine, A young man sits and thinks about their destination. Ahead of them lies a small village. Nearby, the small girl begins listing people she remembers from that village. Various names come to mind, including friends, family members, and even mermaids they once met. Soon after, an announcement spreads through the submarine. The young man listens as the crew prepares to bring the vessel toward the surface. Far above, faint light filters through the water. Bubbles drift upward as the submarine rises from the deep sea. Excitement spreads quickly when the group finally arrives at Bei's hometown. A small ferry celebrates with raised arms while looking at the village surroundings. Suddenly the captain steps forward and claps loudly to gain everyone's attention. The cheerful noise fades as the group turns toward her. With a firm but composed attitude, the captain orders everyone to return to their posts. After giving instructions, the captain reassures them that the sailors will handle the submarine from here. A short rest is allowed, and she plans to visit Bei's house before sunset. Captain walks away with confident steps, while the others observe quietly. One of them comments on her energetic nature. After leaving the submarine, Bei decides to check the village before resting at home. He walks along the wooden path with a companion, while thinking about the current situation of the village. The ferry circles happily in the air while imagining how fun the visit will be. From behind, the others watch her excitement. Soon, Bei reaches the entrance of the village. Familiar sights appear, including a windmill and simple houses. Villagers quickly recognize him. As Bei walks through the village, people happily greet him. The fairy notices how warmly everyone treats him, and realizes that he must visit the village often. Suddenly, someone loudly calls out Bei's name, drawing everyone's attention toward the unexpected voice. As Bei walks through the village path, several girls suddenly run toward him with bright smiles. The girl who noticed his hair looks closely and firmly declares that it has become too long. Her sharp stare makes the others react with laughter and teasing comments. While the girls continue whispering among themselves, they begin wondering about the unfamiliar people standing nearby. One of the girls finally steps forward and directly asks the newcomers about their identities. Her cautious expression shows both curiosity and slight suspicion. The young man calmly introduces himself as Takru while standing beside the winged fairy. With a polite greeting, he presents himself and his small companion to the group, after introducing themselves. One of the village girls approaches Takru with curiosity. She carefully observes his long hair and openly admires how smooth and beautiful it looks. Curiosity quickly grows stronger as the girl gently touches his hair. She wonders if he uses any special care to keep it so smooth. Someone mentions rumors about a new type of ship arriving at the port and wonders if he is connected to it. A young adventurer named Fariel steps forward with excitement. She introduces herself proudly and explains that she has never experienced sea adventures before. Before the conversation can continue, another girl suddenly interrupts. She complains about being ignored while the others focus on Takru. The group continues talking while standing along the village path. Takru smiles calmly as the lively girls gather around him with curiosity. Suddenly, attention shifts toward the tiny fairy resting on Takru's shoulder. One of the girls reacts with great excitement after noticing the small winged figure. Another villager carefully observes the fairy's clothing and accessories. She compliments the neat combination of the dress and hair ribbon. Soon, a girl introduces herself as Tawala, a tailor in the village. With a warm smile, she asks for the fairy's name. While the introductions continue, someone suddenly calls out Bei's name from nearby. Not long after arriving in the village, several girls suddenly grab Takru and begin pulling him in different directions. Seeing the situation become more troublesome, Bei decides to step away for a while. He casually tells the others to take their time while he goes for a short walk. Meanwhile, Takru realizes that Bei has already disappeared from sight. The mountains and open sky stretch in the distance as he panics slightly. Looking around at the trees, the river, and the familiar bridge, he reflects on how little the land and the people have changed over time. Bei suddenly notices a mysterious girl standing nearby. She holds an elegant umbrella. While walking through the quiet path, Bei studies the mysterious girl standing nearby with a parasol. Before he can figure it out, the girl suddenly rushes toward him with excitement. She loudly greets him and calls him by name, revealing that they already know each other. The girl explains that she was worried about him because he did not visit the dungeon recently, examines her appearance more carefully, and tries to understand the change. She looks very different from how she used to appear before. With a cheerful expression, the girl proudly explains that the dark outfit is a popular widow's grave visit-themed cosplay from the dungeon. The girl suddenly complains about speaking with someone she calls an undead, claiming it is unpleasant. Elsewhere nearby, Takru walks slowly while recovering from the exhausting crowd earlier. The small fairy floats beside him and asks if he is all right after the chaotic welcome from the villagers. Standing beside him, the girl under the parasol quietly observes the surroundings while repeating a strange sound in curiosity. She excitedly asks Bei to introduce the boy to her, assuming he must be someone familiar to him. At that moment, Takru appears running quickly from afar. Hearing his name called out, he looks toward the direction of the voice, while the fairy points toward the approaching figure. Suddenly Bei grabs Prish and leaps into the air without warning. The sudden movement shocks everyone nearby. Moments later, the mysterious girl with the parasol calmly watches from the ground. Leaves drift around her as she quietly confirms that the others have already left the area. Not far away, Bei continues carrying Prish while moving quickly through the village paths. She complains about his speed, but he keeps moving toward a nearby house. Meanwhile, Takru collapses from exhaustion after the chaotic situation. Villagers bring Takru inside and ask the family to take care of him, while also passing along news that the sailors from Takru's ship will arrive in the village later. Bei arrives at his house, and the door quickly opens. Several girls greet him warmly and welcome him back to the village. As they walk together, someone recalls that the group once planned a trip before Bei left for the capital. Soon after, Bei asks about Allitera. Entering the house, he finds her sitting quietly inside the room, approaches her and asks what happened. Sitting on the floor, Allitera admits that she has been thinking about leaving the village for a while. She then explains the reason behind her thoughts. After Bei left for the royal capital, many villagers began bringing her requests for help. Inside the quiet house, Allitera sits on the floor while explaining her feelings. The constant requests from villagers have exhausted her. Allitera lowers her head, feeling embarrassed by her confession. The memories of those moments still trouble her. Bei moves closer and crouches beside her. Instead of reacting harshly, he simply greets her again after his return, showing a calm and reassuring attitude. Hearing his gentle response, Allitera slowly raises her face. Her expression softens as she quietly admits that she feels the same way about seeing him again. A quiet house stands in the village as a small fairy happily enjoys a soft meal, pleased with its texture while morning light fills the room. Inside, Bei eats breakfast at the table when he notices that Ma and Chappelle have already left early, leaving the house unusually calm. While chewing thoughtfully, Bei reflects that they must be busy preparing for an important upcoming matter, requiring attention and effort. Curiosity grows within him as he tries to consider how to clearly explain the situation regarding that approaching event. Later, he listens quietly, realizing that he has managed the matter for several years, making him the most suitable person to handle it again. Bei leaves the house confidently while the fairy watches him from behind, the quiet morning air carrying a sense of routine departure. Outside, the fairy suddenly questions him about the mysterious matter, and confusion spreads across Bei's face as he struggles to recall anything specific. His uncertainty irritates the fairy, causing brief tension between them, until two villagers notice the commotion from nearby and react with concern. Recognition dawns when Bei identifies the couple as newlyweds who recently moved into the village, recalling their marriage and professions. As the cart begins moving towards Saranilla, Bei steadies himself and decides there is something important he must clarify along the way. Bei smiles brightly when asked about the upcoming matter, yet he cannot clearly remember what event is approaching despite knowing it will happen soon. Frustration builds around him as the fairy insists it is something held every year in the village, making his forgetfulness seem unusual and careless. A villager calls him back to the cart and decides to explain everything during the ride, urging him to pay attention along the way. While the wagon rolls forward, he learns the event lacks an official name, so everyone simply refers to it in vague terms. The explanation continues, with details about setting roadside stalls and offering village goods to traveling merchants passing through. Bei listens as the event is described as a competitive marketplace where shops quietly battle for customers behind the scenes. Gradually, his memories return, and recognition shows on his face as he recalls organizing the lively annual trade gathering. Pride surfaces when he remembers creating the idea years ago, realizing he had shaped the village tradition himself. Uncertainty follows, since he has not decided whether to open a stall, choosing instead to inspect the location first. Suddenly, villagers rush toward him in visible panic, seeking his guidance as confusion spreads through the busy festival grounds. Crowds gather around the fountain as merchants finish arranging their stalls, turning the square into a lively marketplace. Suddenly, a harsh voice cuts through the noise when an impatient customer begins arguing with a shopkeeper over a sale. Unease spreads among the vendors, who feel troubled by his attitude, despite their willingness to trade fairly. Noticing the commotion, Bei focuses on the scene and understands that the villagers expect him to intervene. Reluctance shows on his face as they urge him forward, reminding him that he resolves these disputes every year. Faced with the disturbance, Bei steps forward despite his reluctance, accepting that avoiding the situation is no longer possible. Without hesitation, he strikes the aggressive man and sends him crashing to the ground, shocking the watching crowd into silence. Calmly assessing the fallen troublemaker, Bei remarks on his foul behavior, while others consider removing him from the area entirely. Responsibility is claimed when another man arrives and admits the offender works under him, asking the villagers for understanding. Moments later, several imposing figures appear behind the speaker, their presence heavy, as they formally request forgiveness for the incident. Bei stiffens under the intense presence of the cloaked figures, forcing himself to agree while sweat forms across his face. The leader promises to discipline his subordinate, then steps forward and asks for patience, hinting that there is a deeper reason behind the earlier aggression. Raising a hand to pause further explanation, Bei admits he will listen, yet points out that their strong odor is overwhelming. Embarrassment spreads among the group as they accept his suggestion, and arrangements are made for them to use the village bath in turns. Steam later rises from the bathhouse as the cloaked visitors wash thoroughly, easing tension and restoring calm to the unsettled festival grounds. Inside the hall, a young woman bows formally to Bei and apologizes for the earlier disturbance, explaining that her people are unfamiliar with local customs. Relief softens the mood as Bei responds kindly, while the small fairy hovers nearby, pleased that tensions have eased. Soon after, the woman mentions that her father, who leads their group, will personally explain the reason behind their behavior. Moments later, a tall man with long damp hair enters, looking refreshed from the bath and admitting he lost track of time. Concerned about his appearance, his daughter quickly approaches him, drawing Bei's curious gaze toward the newly arrived leader. Bei studies the long-haired man carefully, sensing an unusual presence that feels far beyond that of an ordinary traveling merchant. Composure defines the visitor as he formally resumes the discussion, introducing himself as Karl Varon Anival and presenting his daughter beside him. Shock spreads across Bei and the fairy when they learn he is the younger brother of a reigning king. Despite the revelation, the royal guest encourages a relaxed atmosphere, and Bei calmly introduces himself while maintaining his usual attitude. Seriousness returns when Bei notes that for royalty to seek his assistance, the circumstances behind their visit must be grave. Seated across from Bei, the royal visitor mentions rumors describing him as an unusually capable merchant with influence beyond a small village. Calm confidence marks the man's tone as he explains hearing tales of Bei's inventions and wide connections during his travels. Leaning forward, he formally addresses Bei and states that he has a serious request requiring both resources and reliable networks. Grave determination fills his expression as he asks for enough provisions to prevent his kingdom from falling into starvation. Shock spreads across the room, since supplying a realm far larger than a village demands, an effort normally expected between nations, not from one man. Arms crossed, Bei states firmly that no nation would hand over its food supplies without compensation, especially during economic and agricultural hardship. Serious calculation fills his thoughts as he weighs the enormous risk against the rare chance to build ties with royalty. Suddenly, Lorena steps forward and pleads earnestly, acknowledging the unreasonable nature of the request while still asking for help. Emotion overcomes her composure as she kneels before him, declaring that their people have no other hope and promising future repayment. Desperation drives her to grasp his shoulders and beg directly for assistance, leaving Bei startled by the intensity of her appeal. Lorena's desperation pushes her onto the table as she leans over Bei, startling him while her father hurriedly calls her name in alarm. Realizing her behavior, she quickly withdraws and bows repeatedly, overwhelmed with embarrassment as her father apologizes for her impulsive nature. Composure slowly returns to the room, and Bei admits the sudden plea surprised him, yet he recognizes the sincerity behind her actions. Determination replaces hesitation as he decides that such earnest resolve cannot be ignored, and promises to use his extensive connections to assist them. With his decision made, the matter is settled, and the quiet village houses stand unaware of the larger crisis now set in motion. Bei quickly assigns Uncle Bazivador and Chanter to handle preparations, placing responsibility on them while expressing confidence in their abilities. Documents soon pile up before the two men, who tremble at the overwhelming quantity of supplies required for the massive undertaking. Meanwhile, Karl Varon maintains dignified composure, apologizing once more, and stressing that his kingdom's survival depends entirely on this agreement. Formal bows conclude the meeting, and arrangements are set as both sides prepare to depart and begin their respective tasks. Upon returning to their residence, Karl Varon and his daughter are warmly welcomed, signaling the start of urgent efforts to save their homeland. Celebration fills the room as Karl Varon announces the negotiations succeeded, and Lorena rushes forward in gratitude toward Bei. Overcome with excitement, She impulsively leaps at him before quickly retreating in embarrassment at her own boldness. Composure restored, Carlveron formally apologizes again and presents another request, asking for permission to work within the village. Measured caution shapes Bei's response as he questions whether employing royalty might create unnecessary political complications, despite appreciating the offer. Enthusiasm replaces hesitation when Carlveron and Lorena eagerly agree to accept any task, determined to repay their debt through honest labor. Carlveron and Lorena eagerly press Bei for work, crowding him with enthusiasm, until he protests against the overwhelming pressure, regaining control of the situation. Bei tells them to wait and assigns them practical tasks, noting that their sudden determination needs proper direction. Soon after, Lorena begins washing clothes by hand, struggling at first but carefully adjusting her movements under guidance. Nearby, Carlveron assists with surprising grace, earning admiration for his neat and efficient handling of the laundry. By the end of the day, both father and daughter reflect on their first experience with village chores, finding satisfaction in their honest labor. Bei warns Carlveron that the burden will grow heavier and firmly states that the provisions supplied must eventually be repaid. In response, Carlveron smiles with calm confidence and readily accepts the condition, affirming his commitment without hesitation. Two village girls whisper about a group once covered in dirt who were recently seen doing laundry. Surprise spreads quickly as the rumor reaches nearby homes and market stalls. Excitement grows among the young women as they describe a refined man with smooth silver hair, said to be connected to royalty. Their admiration turns the strangers into figures of fascination. The gossip disrupts work inside a shop. An older worker storms in, scolding the distracted girls while crates thump against the floor. Frustration rises as preparations fall behind schedule. Concern spreads that incoming merchants will find nothing worth buying. Outside, a long-haired man pauses in the road. A stern woman confronts him, demanding he help instead of standing idle. Bei approaches calmly as the girls notice his silver hair and refined presence. They quickly recognize him as the royal figure rumored throughout the village marketplace. Standing beside a long-haired committee member, Bei listens, while the festival's executive representative formally explains his role and invites cooperation for upcoming preparations. Confusion briefly surfaces when the festival name is mentioned. Clarification follows as Bei casually admits he created the title himself. Energy surges through the group as the young workers eagerly volunteer, determination replaces earlier gossip, and they pledge full support for the Bobla festival's success. Enthusiasm spreads further across the gathering. Smiling confidently, Bei accepts their commitment as the village unites behind the festival preparations. Bei laughs as the volunteers cheer behind him. Their morale rises quickly, and he notes that the pace of preparation should improve from this point forward. Soon after, two helpers arrive and report that they completed the assigned task. A small winged girl rushes in to greet Bei enthusiastically. Documents are handed over, detailing caravan numbers and their expected route toward the village. Bei studies the attached map with visible approval. Impressed by their effort, he acknowledges the careful planning. The group expresses readiness to assist further with festival arrangements. With responsibilities assigned, Bei instructs them to monitor the caravans and report any changes. The team disperses to carry out their respective duties. Villagers observe Takeru giving steady instructions near the fountain. His composed attitude impresses those watching, and they begin to see him as a capable leader. From a short distance away, he reflects quietly while a small fairy hovers beside him. A thoughtful mood crosses his face as he considers recent changes. Suddenly, a lively girl in dark clothing rushes forward, waving energetically. She notices the busy atmosphere and quickly guesses they are preparing for a festival. Introducing herself as Prish, she reacts with excitement upon spotting the fairy. Meanwhile, Takeru explains that everyone is occupied with urgent tasks, refusing to leave. Prish boldly insists on helping. Her enthusiasm clashes with his blunt dismissal, yet she remains determined to lend her support. Takeru explains that Arena, though appearing human, is actually a lich. He understands her usual behavior, but worries other villagers may not accept her presence. With a dry expression, he adds that her obsessive tendencies could create unnecessary trouble. Doubt lingers as he imagines the chaos she might cause. Prish reacts confidently, claiming she can conceal those peculiar traits. She insists there is no need for excessive concern. Standing beneath her parasol, she argues that devoted enthusiasts can imitate ordinary manners when necessary. Takeru listens without fully trusting her claim. Moments later, Prish dramatically adjusts her appearance and speech. Sparkling with confidence, she seeks approval, leaving Takeru quietly surprised by the sudden transformation. After a tired sigh, Takeru reluctantly grants Prish permission to help. Her eager expression brightens instantly as she prepares to rush off. Without hesitation, she dashes across the square, parasol spinning above her. Takeru watches her leave, already sensing trouble ahead. Nearby, Bei and a fairy observe the situation carefully. Unease surfaces as they question whether Prish will truly behave herself. Moments later, she approaches a young boy with exaggerated politeness. Takeru realizes too late that her intense manner may overwhelm him. As she cheerfully fixates on the boy's name, concern spreads among the onlookers. Takeru fears her strange enthusiasm could spiral beyond control. A quiet understanding passes between them as they acknowledge their shared origin from another world. Despite that bond, a subtle distance still lingers in their hearts. Work resumes around the gate as tasks are reassigned efficiently. Arena is redirected to lighter duties while others carry the heavier loads without complaint. Prish watches Bei with renewed interest, clearly focusing her attention on him. Her expression suggests a deliberate shift in target. Suddenly, two fairies rush in with urgent news about a fast-approaching monster. Alarm spreads instantly through the area as Bei demands details. The description sounds oddly harmless, mentioning wings, long hair, and cute clothing. Confusion replaces panic as Takeru peers toward the horizon to confirm the threat. A horned figure descends before the group, startling everyone at first glance. Confusion spreads when it is revealed that the supposed succubus is actually a male incubus. Relief follows as they learn he is not an enemy but Arena's servant. However, his casual remark about killing someone unsettles the mood again. Prish approaches him directly and addresses him as Charny. Their familiarity suggests prior connection rather than hostility. With a playful smile, she questions his recent outings and invites him to join her. Suspicion lingers beneath her cheerful tone. Suddenly pointing toward Takeru, she accuses Charny of meeting him in secret. The unexpected claim leaves Takeru visibly stunned. Charny suddenly unleashes his power, lifting crates into the air as he declares his loyalty. His jealousy toward Takeru surfaces openly. Disrupting the square, chaos erupts as Takeru is nearly struck amid the flying debris. Shock spreads through the onlookers while Charny lunges forward recklessly. Before further damage occurs, a spear pierces through Charny's advance and halts him mid-air. The impact forces him back, scattering splinters across the ground. An elf warrior steps in calmly, criticizing Charny's outburst as disgraceful. With firm authority he shields Takeru and prepares to withdraw. At Takeru's urging, the elf moves decisively, knocking Charny aside. Smiling with renewed vigor, he admits the clash has reignited his adventurous spirit. Bei calmly remarks that the elf might overdo the fight. Moments later, a heavy explosion echoes across the square. Villagers scatter as debris flies overhead. The elf and Charny clash mid-air, trading swift strikes that shake the surrounding buildings. From a distance, Bei watches with concern, realizing the battle could damage the festival grounds if it continues unchecked. Charny darts around erratically, taunting his opponent while avoiding direct hits. His movements grow faster, increasing the chaos. Suddenly, Arena's presence shifts the atmosphere. Her cold gaze settles on Charny, and his confidence falters as he senses her displeasure. Under Arena's cold stare, Charny immediately apologizes, his earlier arrogance gone. He hovers nervously, asking if she is angry with him. Arena gently corrects him, admitting she shares responsibility for his behavior. Her calm tone restores order, and Charny listens obediently. Watching from afar, Bei and Takeru note how naturally she commands him. The chaos fades as they confirm the conflict has ended. The elf relaxes, returning the borrowed pitchfork with a casual remark. Attention shifts back to the festival grounds and lingering damage. Discussion turns to repairs and compensation, yet Arena declines concern. She prepares to leave while Charny insists on offering a proper apology before departing. Arena adjusts her glasses and calmly admits fault for intervening between the fighters. She tells Charny that the misunderstanding began with her decision to step in. In her imagination, a romantic scene blossoms, framing herself and Takeru within a field of roses. The fantasy contrasts sharply with reality as others watch in confusion. The illusion fades quickly, leaving only awkward silence. Takeru stares uneasily, while Arena's expression returns to its usual composure. Nearby, Prish grows excited over the perceived bond and vows to channel that inspiration elsewhere. Her enthusiasm only deepens the embarrassment surrounding them. As laughter breaks out, Takeru protests while trying to regain dignity. The tense incident finally settles into uneasy relief. Bei casually explains Prish's peculiar hobby, describing her fascination with imagining close bonds between men. His blunt clarification leaves Takeru visibly uncomfortable, while Arena listens in silence. The elf reacts with sudden intensity, pressing for confirmation as Takeru tries to stop the discussion. Embarrassment spreads when the explanation becomes unnecessarily detailed. Nearby villagers enthusiastically praise their captain for ending the earlier conflict. Excited chatter shifts attention away from the awkward topic. Gratitude echoes across the square as several people thank Takru directly. Overwhelmed by the sudden praise, he awkwardly asks them to keep their distance. Laughter bursts from Bei as the crowd lifts Takru in celebration. Despite his protests for help, the festival spirit surges higher than ever. After laughing off the chaos, Bei swiftly regains composure and leads everyone back to preparing for the festival. A carriage moves along a forest road while villagers prepare goods nearby. In the distance, mountains stand beneath a wide sky as daily life continues calmly. Two children watch the travelers with curiosity. The boy explains that merchants from a neighboring village are visiting to open shops during this season. Excitement grows in the girl's eyes as she imagines joining them. Warnings about danger in busy marketplaces surface in their thoughts. Dark rumors of thieves and hidden risks briefly cloud their enthusiasm. Suddenly, a radiant fairy appears, scattering papers through the air. Surprise replaces fear as the children stare at the unexpected figure hovering before them. With bright energy, the fairy announces a lively festival this year. Children rush toward their mother, waving festival papers in delight as fairies flutter above. Approval comes easily, and the plan begins to spread through town. Bei sits calmly with documents in hand, observing the growing crowd. Reports confirm that inviting adventurers to promote the event greatly increased attendance. Satisfaction rises as sales climb steadily. A fellow merchant approaches, Bei questioning why he remains seated while business thrives. The merchant celebrates unexpected success, announcing that every item has sold out quickly. Achievement reflects in his confident expression as today's goal is fully accomplished. Soon after, the merchant presents Bei with a new request. Curiosity replaces relaxation as Bei listens carefully, realizing another task now awaits him. After helping at the shop earlier, Arlita arrives with a tired expression beside her cheerful friend. They explain that the day's work ended quickly, leaving them unexpectedly free. Her friend eagerly suggests that Bei guide Arlita around the festival. Surprise shows on Arlita's face as the invitation is directed toward him without hesitation. Encouragement continues as she insists there is nothing to worry about. From a short distance, Bei watches quietly while Arlita hesitates, uncertain how to respond. Suddenly, another voice challenges the idea, teasing that someone else could take the role instead. Embarrassment flares across Arlita's face as tension rises. Turning away, Arlita struggles to hide her feelings. Despite her denial, uneasiness lingers, while those beside her urge her not to overthink it. Encouraged by her friend's smile, Arlita gathers her resolve and steps toward Bei. Though shy, she accepts his offer to guide her through the lively festival streets. Together they walk beneath hanging banners, as villagers pass by. Bei points out different stalls, explaining each attraction while Arlita listens with growing curiosity. A small child suddenly approaches and offers Arlita a simple flower. Surprise softens her expression as she accepts the gift, watched quietly by others nearby. They notice young vendors confidently managing their own stands. Arlita expresses amazement at children running businesses, while Bei remarks that age matters little in trade. Soon they stop at a food stall where a cheerful server presents dishes proudly. As Bei tastes the meal, Arlita observes him closely, the festival atmosphere surrounding them warmly. As evening approaches, Bei and Arlita continue down the stone path, planning to eat at a familiar food stall once the crowds settle. Suddenly, a lively girl rushes toward them, dragging a chair, calling out to Bei with urgency. She insists they sit, her energy disrupting their quiet walk. Without warning, she produces scissors and stares critically at Bei. Arlita stiffens beside him, as the sharp blades glint under the fading light. The girl bluntly declares that Bei's hair needs cutting, claiming his untidy look drives customers away. Confusion spreads across his face at the sudden accusation. Arlita quickly intervenes, trying to calm the situation before it escalates. Meanwhile, the girl argues that she will fix his hair for free, demanding simple cooperation. The girl studies Bei's face closely, urging him to smile more instead of frowning. She warns that constant irritation will only drive customers away from his stall. Ignoring his discomfort, she suddenly grabs his hair and begins cutting recklessly. Bei flinches as the scissors snap near his ear, while Arlita panics beside them. Before the chaos settles, another young woman approaches, raising her hand calmly. Her cheerful expression contrasts sharply with the tense atmosphere surrounding the haircut. Sensing trouble, she questions whether they are in the middle of something serious. Bei awkwardly reassures her, though confusion remains evident on every face nearby. Finally, she explains that her clothing shop lacks enough workers. With composed urgency, she asks to borrow help from them, shifting the situation in an entirely new direction. With firm confidence, the shop owner declares that Arlita would be far more suitable as a sales attendant. She argues that placing a man in front of the stall lacks appeal and elegance. Turning toward Arlita, Bei gently asks whether she would consider helping. Though hesitant, she listens carefully as he assures her that he supports the idea. Uncertainty fills Arlita's eyes as attention shifts to her hood. Beiki questions why she insists on keeping it on, noting that appearance matters in greeting customers. Slowly, she lowers her gaze and grips the fabric tighter. Embarrassment surfaces as she admits she prefers hiding her hair from public view. Thoughtfully, Beisi reflects on her concern and responds with calm reasoning. He explains that most villagers would not mind, though some customers might still form their own impressions. Memories surface of their first meeting when Arlita mentioned that dark hair was seen as a sign of misfortune. Beiri reflects that such judgments depend largely on the feelings of the person involved. Suddenly tension rises as Arlita reacts sharply to the discussion. Her movement startles those nearby, and concern spreads across Bei's face at her distress. Struggling to speak, she admits that her hood exists because she lacks confidence. The words come slowly, revealing how deeply the belief has affected her. Saraba steps forward firmly, rejecting the idea that Arlita should hide her beautiful hair. She insists that no one's careless opinion deserves such weight. With fierce resolve, Saraba declares that any insult about the hair should be directed at her instead. Arlita stands stunned, as protective determination fills the space between them. With bold confidence, Saraba declares she will gather the villagers and confront anyone spreading insults. Despite her fierce tone, she reminds Arlita that violence would not solve anything. Gratitude softens Arlita's expression as she admits finding new courage. She offers to assist at the stall, suggesting they meet again after sunset to talk further. Saraba teases Bei loudly, yet he responds with calm admiration for her straightforward nature. The tension eases as playful energy replaces the earlier conflict. Deciding to move elsewhere, Bei suggests finding a quieter place with fewer passers-by. Saraba eagerly follows, still intent on cutting his hair properly. Standing tall, Beisi allows her to prepare, confident in her skill. She raises the scissors with determination while he calmly reminds her not to cut too much. Beneath fluttering festival banners, Saraba studies her work while villagers gather around. Arlita watches quietly as curious onlookers wait to see the result. Turning him around, Saraba announces that she has finished. The surrounding crowd leans in, eager to judge the sudden transformation. A brief silence follows as Beidi touches his shortened hair. Surprise flickers across his face when he realizes just how much has been cut. Confidently, Saraba declares the speed and precision of her skill. Even a passerby comments that the trim ended far quicker than expected. Soon mothers and children step forward with bright expressions, asking for haircuts as well. With pride, Saraba agrees, inviting them to line up before her. After finishing the haircut, Saraba decides to leave, satisfied that customers have gathered. Bei calls out, mentioning he will meet Arlita later once the crowd thins. Walking alone, Bei rubs his neck and notices the cool air. Without his longer hair, the evening breeze feels sharper against his skin. Meanwhile, Arlita appears in a new outfit, her cape flowing gently as she steps forward. The change in hairstyle gives her an unexpectedly refined presence. Stopping near a bench, she shyly explains that the clothes were chosen for her. Wearing unfamiliar colors makes her feel slightly self-conscious. Bei studies her quietly before offering honest praise. His calm approval eases her tension, and a soft smile begins to replace her earlier doubt. Quietly, Arlita admits she once disliked herself and struggled with long-held insecurity. Standing beside Bei now feels strange, as if those old feelings are slowly loosening. Petals drift around her as she smiles with gentle confidence. Living in this village has gradually changed her, allowing her to accept parts of herself she once rejected. Bei listens with warmth before suggesting they visit the food stall again. He expresses simple happiness that she feels more at ease among the villagers. Turning toward him, Arlita notices his relaxed expression and the softened mood between them. The evening breeze carries fallen leaves as their conversation grows lighter. Without thinking, she reaches out and touches his hair, confirming its smooth texture. Startled yet amused, Bei watches her as she quietly withdraws her hand. Bei runs a hand through his newly cut hair, noticing how different he looks. Arlita studies him closely and remarks that his shorter style makes him appear younger than before. The topic shifts to his age, and he admits he is 16. Arlita reflects that his appearance suits his years, observing him with quiet curiosity. As they walk side by side, she realizes he has grown taller recently. Light laughter follows, easing the mood while they continue along the stone path. Leaning closer without thinking, Arlita gently pats his head. Bei stiffens at the unexpected gesture, feeling both embarrassed and strangely aware of her presence beside him. Under the festival banners, several girls surround Arlita with playful curiosity. Their teasing suggests she spent the previous night with Bei, leaving her flustered but unable to respond clearly. After the laughter fades, Arlita walks with them through the plaza. Though embarrassed, she admits she enjoyed the time and appreciates being able to see him again. Elsewhere, preparations continue as food cooks over open heat. The lively atmosphere signals that the celebration is nearing its peak. Nearby, Bei calmly stirs a pot, focused on finishing the evening meal. A small fairy approaches from behind, watching his quiet dedication. Sitting alone for a moment, Bei reviews festival matters and reflects on his duties. Responsibility settles over him as the event steadily moves toward its conclusion. Sitting alone, Bei reflects on the festival and admits feeling strangely finished. Despite that mood, he reminds himself that he began this event and must carry responsibility until the end. When he casually suggests handing things over to tackle, several girls immediately rush toward him in outrage. Their fierce reactions stop him before he can continue. Fairies swarm around Bei, scolding him for trying to push duties aside. Overwhelmed by their noise and blows, he stumbles back while insisting he understands. Suddenly, a chilling presence fills the air, and enormous eyes appear in the darkness. Bei freezes, sensing something far more serious than playful anger. The fairies quickly grow concerned and examine him closely. Though he denies being ill, they insist he should rest briefly before returning to his festival responsibilities. A towering stranger suddenly appears before the fairies, casting a heavy presence over the clearing. Bei reacts instantly, stepping forward as the smaller figures freeze in alarm. Dark, intense eyes lock onto the group, causing several of them to panic. Fear spreads quickly as the man's silent stare unsettles everyone nearby. Recognizing the danger, Bei orders the fairies to move back and keep their distance. He studies the stranger carefully, sensing hostility beneath the surface. Approaching calmly, Bei questions the man's purpose in the village and offers help if needed. The stranger remains still, watching him without lowering his guard. Abruptly, the tension breaks when the man excitedly notices food cooking nearby. His intimidating aura fades as enthusiasm replaces menace, leaving Bei momentarily speechless. After tasting the food, the stranger suddenly questions Bei's origins. Hearing him mention specific dishes, the man suspects he might also be a reincarnated person from another world. Embarrassed by his excitement, the stranger apologizes to the nearby fairy and lowers his voice. His earlier intensity fades, replaced by awkward friendliness. They sit down together as more food is prepared. The atmosphere shifts from tension to curiosity while the fairies hover cautiously at a distance. With dramatic flair, the man introduces himself as a traveler and former high school student. Bei listens skeptically, doubting parts of the exaggerated claim. While chewing thoughtfully, the stranger speculates about legends and ancient powers in this world. Bei studies him carefully, unsure how much of the story is truth. While eating calmly, Bei listens as the traveler complains about reckless gods and the dangers of standing out. He warns that drawing attention invites trouble from adventurers. Raising his voice, the traveler insists this village already has many adventurers. Bei quietly covers the pot, offering a brief apology while observing the man's reaction. Suddenly, the traveler drops to his knees and declares he only wants a peaceful, slow life. His dramatic plea contrasts with his earlier bold attitude. Bei studies him carefully and concludes that his situation will soon become clear. The traveler looks confused as Bei hints at something approaching. Without further explanation, Bei leads him toward a nearby house. The calm exterior of the building suggests a temporary refuge from whatever may arrive next. Inside the house, a cheerful woman welcomes Bei and the traveler warmly. She carries a sleeping child and invites them to rest without hesitation. She explains that Bei once helped her family and introduced her husband to work. The traveler listens quietly while sipping his drink, observing the modest home. When offered more food, the traveler apologizes for his appetite. Despite having eaten earlier, the woman kindly encourages him to take the leftovers without concern. Seated together on the wooden floor, they share a simple meal. The atmosphere grows calm as gratitude replaces the tension from outside. With gentle sincerity, the woman thanks Bei for everything he has done since coming to the village. Her appreciation leaves both young men quietly reflective. Bei gently refuses additional payment, insisting that steady work matters more than rewards. The traveler watches silently, surprised by his casual dismissal of profit. Seizing the moment, the traveler proposes turning the house into an inn. The woman hesitates at first, unsure whether such responsibility would suit her family. Leaning forward confidently, He argues that practical experience is valuable. Beiki questions his sudden enthusiasm while listening to the detailed suggestion. Explaining further, the traveler points out that her cooking already attracts guests. He claims that with careful timing, she could earn income without neglecting childcare. Rising with bold determination, the traveler declares he will personally teach them the necessary skills. His confident grin fills the room with unexpected ambition. Encouraged by the traveler's bold proposal, the household begins to imagine a new future. Bei watches quietly, impressed by how easily the idea gains support. Amusement crosses his face as the traveler studies him seriously. A direct invitation follows, suggesting that Bei remain in the village instead of wandering again. Surprised by the offer, Bei listens as the traveler reasons that shared backgrounds make them suitable companions. The suggestion of building a life together lingers in the air. Without hesitation, the traveler pulls Bei into a tight embrace, declaring firm acceptance. The sudden display of emotion leaves Bei flustered and speechless. Relief softens the traveler's expression as he admits genuine happiness. Held in strong arms, Beiki senses that he has finally found a place where he belongs. The traveler confidently explains that if land is available, he can build a house himself. The woman eagerly offers them a place to stay until everything is ready. Curiosity grows as Beatty wonders whether such skill comes from his past life. The traveler listens, slightly surprised by the thoughtful question. Instead of giving a direct explanation, he promises to demonstrate his ability. Determination shows in his posture as he steps outside. Standing near an open patch of ground, he considers using magic for construction. Bei watches carefully, holding the child while waiting for proof. After choosing the spot, the traveler raises his hand and releases powerful energy. Light bursts across the clearing, beginning the creation of their new home. The traveler calls Bei and calmly claims the power he uses was granted by a god. Sparks of light gather around his hands as the others step back in confusion. Confidence spreads across his face while energy swirls through the yard. He stretches out his arm as if preparing to reveal something extraordinary. A large vehicle suddenly appears before them, solid and unfamiliar in this rural setting. Bei stares at the machine, unable to understand what he is seeing. Trying to explain, the traveler admits he can exchange magic for objects from his previous world. The child clings tighter as surprise fills the porch. With excitement, he introduces the strange creation as a camping vehicle. The family circles it carefully, amazed by the impossible sight. Leaning on the railing, Bei senses that something about this world feels unstable. Doubt clouds his thoughts as he quietly questions the logic surrounding recent events. A sudden realization overwhelms him, and he clutches his head in confusion. The possibility of divine interference unsettles him more than he expected. Meanwhile, the traveler cheerfully produces packaged food from thin air, offering dinner without concern. His carefree attitude contrasts sharply with Bei's troubled expression. As leaves drift across the sky, Bei reflects on the strange companion he has accepted. Despite his worries, he admits that life has become far more complicated since meeting him. In the village square, Takuru stood beside a broad man and faced the gathered residents. He was presented as a new villager before the upcoming festival. Beside him, the older man urged Takuru to say something. Pressure settled over the square as villagers waited in silence. Suddenly, Takuru raised his hand in an exaggerated salute and shouted his introduction with full force. After the outburst, birds scattered into the sky above the trees. The older man awkwardly attempted to smooth the situation, while reminding everyone of preparations. Later, concern replaced confidence. Takuru lowered his head, realizing his approach had unsettled the villagers instead of reassuring them. Near the training grounds, Takuru mentioned he still used the name from his previous life. The older man found it unusual and began to suspect something. Leaning closer, the man abruptly questioned him. The idea that Takuru might be a reincarnated person surfaced, shocking him. Excitement quickly replaced disbelief. He compared their apparent ages and laughed, wondering if they were actually similar underneath. Takuru then explained he had died and awakened in this body. He described being an ordinary high school student before. A light laugh followed his confession. The older man remained stunned, quietly processing the unexpected truth. Takuru apologized for speaking strangely, admitting the gap between them felt overwhelming. Inside a classroom, like space, Takuru smiled and remarked how talking like this reminded him of school days. The older man watched quietly from behind. Enthusiasm broke through as the man declared they should be friends. Takuru accepted, and they shook hands firmly. Joy spread across Takuru's face, though he noticed their age difference again. Concern flickered when he realized the man's body could not handle too much excitement. Soon after, a blonde woman named Rarina approached. Takuru turned toward her, wondering if she had grown accustomed to village life. Rowena reacted quickly, denying any misunderstanding. Takru reassured her that the villagers had treated him kindly, easing her visible tension. Gathering courage, she stepped closer and asked about the supplies he had requested earlier. Takru looked at her, surprised by the sudden seriousness. Determination showed on her face as she explained her concern about her father's decision. Takru scratched his head, admitting he had not thought deeply about it. Before the discussion continued, children called out to Rowena. Takru suggested checking on the situation, and she insisted on joining him. The girls reminded her about helping at the shop for the afternoon festival. Takru offered to handle it himself, while the older man loudly supported the plan. The older man suddenly pulled Takru into a tight embrace, insisting on joining the outing. Takru gently refused, saying he would wait and handle things calmly. Soon after, a cheerful young woman explained that the requested supplies were already prepared in the warehouse. Noticing her closeness to Takru, the older man flushed and raised his voice in introduction. Takru quietly asked him to lower the volume. She offered to guide them to the warehouse and mentioned delivering a lunchbox to her father. Takru followed, without hesitation. Inside, she proudly presented handmade dumplings learned from Takru. The older man praised her cooking skill while Takru watched in disbelief. Outside the wooden house, the young woman asked them to wait while she called her father. Once she disappeared inside, the older man suddenly questioned Takru's intentions toward her. Embarrassment mixed with defensiveness as Takru denied any improper thoughts. Doubt lingered, and the older man wondered if Takru truly felt nothing. Takru answered calmly, which only deepened the man's confusion. Frustration burst out as the older man imagined beautiful women surrounding Takru. Overwhelmed by jealousy, he demanded to know why Takru seemed unaffected. Silence followed the outburst. Takru called him troublesome, while the older man reconsidered the situation with sudden realization. Resting on wooden crates, the older man grumbled that reincarnation should have granted him an easier life. Takru reminded him that controlling his strength mattered more than indulgence. Flexing his gloved hand, he admitted adjusting to this body had taken effort. Time spent living differently still felt too short. Conversation shifted to the Demon King's power he carried. Even restrained, the magic remained overwhelming and dangerous if carelessly released. Memories of the demon continent surfaced, a land ruled by brutal strength where such power proved necessary. In peaceful surroundings now, that same strength felt inconvenient and isolating. Takru offered to handle any trouble within a manageable range. The older man watched him carefully, sensing hidden strain behind his calm expression. Suddenly, shouts erupted nearby as several men ran wildly through the street. Panic spread while Takru remained still, observing the chaos. A young girl leapt forward, declaring she would not forgive the attackers. Vines lashed out around her as the fleeing men screamed. From a distance, Takru stepped forward and blocked their path. His movement was casual, yet perfectly timed. With a light motion, he struck once. The men collapsed instantly, scattered across the ground without resistance. Crates crashed loudly as the attackers were sent flying. Takru calmly brushed off his hands, saying it was nothing serious. The older man stared in admiration, asking where such power came from. Takru replied lightly that it was a gift from a god nearby. The girl reported that the criminals had been captured. Relief spread briefly across the area. Suddenly, a massive magical sphere formed overhead. Spiraling out of control, the girl panicked, admitting she could not stop it alone. Without hesitation, the older man stepped forward and struck the sphere directly. The explosion froze midair, leaving shattered fragments suspended as silence followed. After the explosion froze, the girl rushed toward them, worried about the older man's condition. He assured her that his body was sturdy enough to endure it, facing him. She lowered her head and apologized for losing control. He remained calm and told her not to dwell on it. Standing among scattered debris, he warned that anyone holding such power must exercise twice the caution. The girl listened seriously. A warm smile replaced his stern tone as he promised to protect everyone like a proper hero. Her eyes shone with admiration. Finally, she admitted she could not control magic at all. Surprise crossed his face as she suddenly called him her master. The princess admitted she kept failing at magic, despite daily effort. With shining eyes, she asked the older man to teach her personally. Before he could answer, she declared she would move into his house. Takru quickly tried to stop the sudden decision. Calmly, Takru explained that she was both a hero and a princess. Such a choice could not be made lightly. An elderly man appeared, smiling, as he granted permission. He stated that if it was with them, he had no objection. Lowering his voice, the elder revealed the real issue. The princess's magic had been rising dangerously, causing concern within the kingdom. The elder explained that if her power erupted again, the city could suffer severe damage. Such risks left the kingdom with few options. He quietly asked whether they would accept responsibility for the princess. Tension settled as the weight of the request became clear. Takru glanced at her hopeful expression and smiled. Given the circumstances, he stated there was no choice but to agree. Overjoyed, the princess leapt forward and embraced him tightly. Gratitude overflowed as she celebrated his decision. Afterward, she hurried off to inform the king. Before leaving, she asked Takru to wait, determined to meet him again soon. The princess happily clung to Takru's back while the older man protested that events were moving too quickly. Takru accepted the situation calmly. Later, he reflected on how unexpectedly peaceful everything felt. Despite the chaos, he decided this strange, slow life was not so bad. During the village festival, two men clinked their mugs and celebrated loudly, while others laughed and enjoyed the lively atmosphere around them. Near the fountain, the blonde-haired woman spoke with Takru and another companion, expressing concern as the time to return home approached. Later, Takru sat beside her, listening carefully while she mentioned the kingdom's troubles, and shared what had drawn her to this place. By the carriage, preparations were completed, and Takru announced their departure with calm confidence. Before leaving, she apologized for relying on them, and Takru assured her through his steady actions that everything was under control. Takru suddenly pointed at Takru's companion, announcing his decision while the others looked at him in confusion near the festival grounds. With a confident grin, he declared that he would head out first and leave the festival's opening to the others, ignoring their disbelief. Moments later, a carriage began shaking violently, forcing one young man to brace himself as dust scattered across the street. Pain struck him again, and he admitted defeat while recalling how these repeated incidents always left his stomach aching. In the end, the group gathered together, determined to rely on one another and push forward despite the lingering unease. Cecilia calmly instructed Takru to assist Kaito with the tasks while promising to teach him more about village matters later. Soon after, a young woman approached Takru hesitantly, asking for his help as she seemed troubled by something. She explained that everything was being left to her, leaving her overwhelmed, and Takru listened with a tired but understanding expression. Together they walked along the path, where he reassured her that he could handle the situation, easing her worries. As they continued forward, Takru reflected quietly, accepting the responsibility with a faint, confident smile. From the trees, a cat-eared girl suddenly appeared, catching Takru and the blonde woman off guard with her unusual presence. She stepped closer without hesitation, studying them carefully while Takru remained still, unsure of her intentions. Without warning, the girl leaped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around Takru, startling both him and the blonde woman. Clinging to him happily, she revealed her name and expressed strong affection, leaving Takru frozen in shock. As confusion settled over the scene, the fairy-like girl tried to organize the situation, attempting to make sense of the sudden confession. Tamiya happily explained that she had come from the capital in pursuit of Takru, proudly admitting her bold decision before the others. Seated together beneath the trees, she shyly revealed that although they had met several times at church, this was their first proper conversation. She described how helping with renovations and preparing meals changed her after meeting Takru, inspiring her to work harder for others. Hearing this, the women praised Takru's character, acknowledging the positive influence he had on those around him. Walking away beside him, Tamiya spoke softly, while Takru lowered his gaze, quietly reflecting on her feelings. Takru looked at Tamiya in disbelief, questioning whether her feelings were truly because of him. While she met his gaze without hesitation, lowering his eyes, he struggled to understand her words, unsure how to respond as she watched him with quiet confusion. He admitted that he was not the one who created the renovation plans, explaining that he had only followed instructions and worked alongside others. Tamiya firmly denied his doubts, insisting that his efforts and character had inspired her more than he realized. Overwhelmed by her sincerity, Takru covered his face, torn between embarrassment and the weight of her honest admiration. Overwhelmed by embarrassment, Takru suddenly apologized and ran from the others, ignoring their startled calls as he fled toward the forest. He stopped beneath a tree near the river, sitting alone, while the fairy quietly approached and asked if he had calmed down. Admitting his weakness, Takru confessed that he lacked confidence and felt undeserving of praise, believing his efforts were ordinary. He continued explaining that others overestimated him, claiming he had no special talent and struggled even with magic. Suddenly, a loud cry echoed through the woods as someone rushed in urgently, breaking the tense atmosphere around him. The captain approached Takeru calmly, telling him that humility was admirable, but becoming ashamed of himself was not the right path. Takeru lowered his head and admitted that he had always been this way, believing his lack of confidence was simply part of his nature. The fairy added gently that comparing himself to others was unnecessary, reminding him that every person had different strengths. As evening lights flickered through the trees, the captain explained that true strength came from the heart, not outward ability. Hearing this, Takeru listened quietly while she assured him that he was still growing and should not rush his own progress. Encouraged by the captain's words, Takeru listened as she insisted he still had room to grow and should take pride in that journey. Tamiya and the others stepped closer, sensing the shift in his mood while the captain advised him to notice the warmth around him. Embarrassed, Tamiya apologized for her sudden confession, admitting she had surprised even herself with such honesty. Takeru looked at her more carefully. He noticed the dirt and small injuries she had ignored while chasing after him. Concern replaced hesitation, and he urged her to wash and treat the wounds quickly, realizing how much trouble she endured for his sake. Tamiya hurried to wash herself, flustered and worried that Takeru might see her in a messy state after chasing him through the forest. The fairy reminded Takeru how far Tamiya had traveled from the capital, explaining that such a journey normally required great effort and time. The captain added that beastfolk possessed strong physical abilities, making the long trip possible despite the difficult road. She then told Takeru that if he respected Tamiya's feelings, he needed to decide his response properly, instead of avoiding the issue. Standing before her at last, Takeru called Tamiya's name, preparing himself to face her emotions directly. Gathering his courage, Takeru called Tamiya's name, admitting that being pursued so sincerely left him flustered and unsure. With a trembling voice, he confessed that although he was happy about her feelings, he still did not fully understand his own heart. After a deep breath, Takeru bowed and asked if they could begin as friends, hoping to learn more about her properly. Tamiya froze in surprise, her wide eyes reflecting both shock and relief at his honest response. Before the moment could settle, the captain interrupted sharply, scolding Takeru for offering something so restrained, instead of a clearer answer. Flustered by the captain's teasing, Takeru defended his decision, insisting he needed time to understand Tamiya properly, before promising anything more. Smiling gently, Tamiya accepted his pace and reached for his hand, relieved that he did not reject her feelings outright. After returning home, she introduced herself boldly to others, as someone connected to Takeru's future, leaving him stunned by her confident declaration.